Very good.
Great, guys. Good to see you all. Let's start the day so that we are on time and we'll be finishing on time. I know it's a half-day virtual event for everybody who has come here for. Good morning and good evening to everyone who has joined today for half-day virtual event on AI in banking and financial services sector, which is booming. And all the audience are from all parts of the world. Hope you and all your family are safe during the COVID times. Now to introduce me and my company to you. My name is Nitin Naveen and I'm Vice President Innovation and Strategy at AI CodeSpot. I'll be host for the day. Further, I will be joined by my colleague Arvind Kannan and Naveen Kumar, who will also assist me in keeping the event lively. So thanks a lot to them for putting in hard work and making this one a huge success. We have more than 400 people who have registered for the event. I'm waiting for everyone to join at a very early time. Thank you. In AI CodeSpot, I'll tell you about the company, what we do. Our aim is to, number one, AI-driven community all over the world so that like-minded people can be a part of the same in supporting, growing, and making it a huge success. Our mission is to serve as a hub for information regarding Industry 4.0 technologies, which encompass and not limited to artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, robotics, blockchain, IoT, edge computing, analytics, 5G, drone technology, edge AI, digital twin, AR, VR, cloud, and so on. So there are a lot of things which we'll be planning in the near future. We'll continue to do industry-backed webinars and hybrid events. The knowledge repository will be made from reliable data through industry leaders, subject matter experts, and the thought leaders. We'll enrich the content through our videos, blogs, podcasts, newsletters, and digital content to shed light on the dynamic industry, which we all are part of. Request all of you to go through our website, that is aicodespot.io, for further updates. Also, please like our social media handles, which will keep you all updated on everything what we propose to offer in the near future. Now coming to today's event, for which you all have registered and you have come here for. This is one series of event, AI in banking and financial services, which we have planned this month. There are lots more in store for subsequent months as well. So request all of you to stay connected with us and enjoy the learning which we have stored for the today. So today we are having around 5 talks and a panel discussion, which will be a great learning for all of you, I tell you. Before starting with the day, I'd like to set up the tone and highlight few things so that it can be an amazing learning and networking event for you all. First of all, I would like to special thank our partner Digit7, who is the technology partner as well. And Chitray Mani is the face of our company, Digit7. He's the Chief Technology and Innovation Officer there. And obviously, he will take part in the panel discussion in that. Digit7 helped us in understanding our vision and supporting us to create this platform through which we can achieve our objectives. Their support is immense, and we are there because of them. Some introduction about Digit7 to everyone so that you are aware of what Digit7 is all about. So in Digit7, innovation is the cornerstone of them. Direction fills them with purpose, and purpose provides the structure. The visionaries at Digit7 realized this a quarter of a century ago, and they have ever since provided organizations with the strategic innovation roadmaps they need to forge their cultures. Innovation is their last name, and disruption is their address. They created paradigm shift in organizations with intuitive technology, equipping firms to endure accelerating change. You can go through their website, which is www.digit7.io, and understand more in depth. Also, thanks to our community partner, which includes Scotiabank, Securian Financial, Deloitte, BMS, Wipro, TD Bank, National Bank of Canada, and McKinsey. To make this event a huge success, for which you all are part of today. A special mention to speakers, all the speakers and attendees of the event who registered and came today to achieve their objectives through this forum. At the end of the day, if you gain few things out of this forum, our core objective will be achieved. Just to apprise of you all, there will be few polls which we would be conducting throughout the day, and the same will be broadcasted to everyone. As soon as you can see it, kindly attempt at them. Lastly, if anybody wants to ask questions, they can do ask after the end of each session. through Q&A section, which is at the right-hand corner of the menu option, or at the end of the entire session. Also, you can ask to the speakers who all are available at that time. There's also a hand button. If you can see, there's a hand button at the top, at the bottom of the screen, through which you can even raise the hand, and then you will be at the stage to ask questions to the speakers as well. So there are a couple of options to ask the questions, which is very important to keep it lively, okay? Now I will quickly go through the agenda and let you all get introduced to the speakers and their topic. And then we'll start with our first talk with Nitesh Soni, who is the first speaker from Scotia. Let me share the screen to you. Hope everybody can see the agenda. Yeah? Can anyone confirm just now so that I can move on with the same?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. So the time is 8:57. We'll be starting at 9 by Nitesh Soni, who's Director, Advanced Analytics and AI for Technology in Scotiabank. His topic is Building Bank for Every Future using Advanced Analytics and AI. Then we have Chandrasekhar Ramela, who's Senior Director, Customer Platform Leader, and he's in Securian Financials. He will be taking the second talk for the day. Then we have Andres, who's the Senior Director in Scotiabank in Digital Banking. His topic is Application of Advanced Analytics in Today's Banking Industry in North America. Then we have Todd Roberts, who is Partner at Deloitte Canada. His topic is Key Trends in Payments plus Payments Modernization Project. After this, we'll take a break of around 10 minutes. We'll see the timing, how it goes. And then we'll start with our panel discussion, which is a great panel discussion, in which we'll be discussing the future of banking and financial services with AI technologies. In panel, you have Chitray, who's the face of Digit7, who's the face of InfoVision, who's the face of AI Core Spot, and he's the Chief Technology and Innovation Officer. The next is Neil Bhandar, who is the Head of Analytics BMS. Then we have Rohit Khona, who is from Wipro, his partner and Head of BFSI Consulting, Canada. Then we have Tarun Dhot, who is AVP in TD Bank. So all the four guys will be part of the panel discussion. Then we have Nizar, who is the Senior Director, AI and Advanced Analytics in National Bank of Canada. His topic is Requirements and Challenges to Deploy AI in Financial Institutions. And then we have the last talk for the day, which is Dr. John, who is from McKinsey. He's a great technology leader. And his topic is Understanding the Importance of Securing the ML Code with ML. So hope all is set for the day and all of you are in an exciting mode to listen to the leaders. So without wasting any time, may I invite Nitesh Soni to please start with the day and take the talk further. Thank you, Nitesh.
Thanks, Nitin, and thanks for the invitations, and thanks to you and your team for setting up this event. And I'm very excited to speak on this. And although I have only 20 minutes in my share, but I'll be happy to take any question offline as well, and not a problem.
Sure.
Let me share my screen and. Let's see.
Yeah, I'll confirm to you and then I'll go on a silent mode.
Yeah. So, Nitin, sharing button is frozen from and it's not allowing me to click.
Oh, just try once more. Or there's another option. You can just log off and log in again.
Okay, let me log off and log in again then.
Yes, sure. So guys who have joined late, you can ask questions to the speakers as and when they speak after their talk is going to get over. So you can put your Q&A questions in the Q&A section, which is on the top in the right-hand side. You can see that. And there's a question by Manning Lloyd. Will copies of all slides and content be available to the audience? Yes, Manning will be doing that in the handout section also. Parallelly, we'll be sending it across to you all in your email ID. So after the event is over, that is on Monday, we'll be sending it across to you all.
Hey,
Nitesh,
Nitin,
you're back.
Still not allowing me to share the screen.
Okay.
Yeah, it's still not, the platform is not allowing me to share the screen.
Okay, so you have shared the presentation to us? We can share on your behalf?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, let's do that actually.
Arvind? Give me 1 minute, yeah. You are yet to share, I think, Nitesh. You have not shared the presentation.
No, I sent the email.
Okay.
This morning.
Okay, this morning. Okay. Just try to share the screen meanwhile. Yeah, got it. So we got it. We'll just be sharing here. In the meanwhile, Nitesh, you can just introduce yourself to the audience.
Yes.
And then we'll start with your presentation. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So as Ethan mentioned, I'm director for advanced analytics and AI for corporate function areas in Scotiabank. And basically here idea is how we can make or modernize corporate function area by embedding AI into it. Before joining Scotiabank, I was working as a consultant in Deloitte, and then has some experience working in another top tier bank in Australia. And my background, actually, I'm PhD in physics, and more precisely experimental particle physics. So I do have a lot of experience working with and data, advanced analytics, AI, and so on. So yeah, I can see your screen, Arvind. Okay, so let me start by saying that the title for this talk is really broad. It's building bank for every future using advanced science and AI. And as Nitin mentioned, we have a packed agenda, and we have kind of a amazing speaker lineup, and they will be covering a lot of interesting areas. So I would be focused more on a little bit of AI strategy for the Scotiabank, and also sharing few examples of use cases, especially coming from the technology function areas. So Arvind can go to next slide. Okay, so just a quick intro for Scotiabank. We are leading bank in Americas. We are headquartered in Toronto, and has over 90,000 employees globally. And we serve our customers from both sides, from personal as well as from the business banking sides. And overall, the bank strategy is around these three pillars. First one is, keeping customer first in everything which we do, whether it's advanced analytics, AI, or whatever it is. Second is basically we have a purpose-driven, winning mindset team, which basically which is high performing team, and which basically um, help to grow the revenue for the bank and serve our customers and our stakeholders in a best possible way. And the third one is we want to lead in Americas in some of our business, some of our important business areas. Go to next slide, Arvind. And in order to support overall bank strategy, data analytics plays a very critical role. And with the mission that we want to transform bank into a data-centric organizations by producing impactful customer insights, embedding innovations to the analytics, and just making sure we have better governance of the data. And I just want to highlight here, because of the title of this talk, that our operating model is quite unique, actually. Before I talk about operating model, I just want to emphasize that without technology, we cannot acquire data. Without data, we cannot do analytics. And once we, or let's say AI, even if we do AI, we still need technology to deploy it. So this is more like a virtuous cycle of data analytics and technology, and they go hand on hand. And from our perspective, actually, so we have a very unique operating model where our chief analytic officer, our chief data officer, our CIO, chief information officer, all three reports to the same pillar. So this helps basically to break a lot of silos in the organizations and move faster, and also making sure that every pillar has the same strategy, which is aligned to overall corporate strategies. So this is quite unique. And Arvind, next slide, please. Okay. So just to emphasize here, as I mentioned, our operating model, and here what I want to talk about is, if you think about overall banks analytics, they are typically divided into three main buckets. Sorry, previous slides. Yeah, typically divided into three main buckets. And these are like virtual buckets, I would say. One is more focused on customer sides. Second is more focused on risk side, and third is more focused on modernizing the corporate function areas. So from the customer side, I think the more emphasis is how we can improve the customer experience while leveraging big data and AI. But we just want to make sure whatever we deliver is ethical, to enable a better customer experience in the bank, right? Second is on the risk side, basically how we can protect our bank in a better way using advanced analytics and AI. Third one is how we can modernize our business function area, and this is where actually my role reside actually. So when I talk about business function area, you think about various business units which you require to run the bank. For example, HR, marketing, finance, technology, and so on. So I'm responsible for the technology function area. And idea here is how we can improve the operational efficiencies, how we can reduce the operational risk to the bank, to do that, how we can leverage the underlying data and AI to do that. And in addition to that, I just want to mention a couple of more points. We have a data-driven culture. That means a key part of our strategy is to build a strong talent of pool of data scientists, data engineers, or machine learning engineers, and fully integrate them to the business analytics professionals who have a deep banking knowledge. So again, to the basic points, the data scientists, data engineers cannot work in silos. They have to integrate with business professionals to deliver the meaningful AIs. The final point here is, ethics. As you know, business is all about trust. So we have a responsibility to safeguard our customer data and use it for their good. So, and within bank, we have also this AI and ethics group, which help us to make sure whatever solution we build is ethical in nature. Right. Next slide. So this is more like AI strategy framework. So I think here what I want to say is AI is not like a plug and play technology, right? So we need to have a proper framework to deliver the AI solution within organizations, right? And the AI strategy should align to the overall corporate strategy. That means whatever bank strategy we have at the top, the AI strategy should complement that or should support that, right? And the first step is really like we should have holistic engagements. And here, what I mean here is that we should have a top leadership buy-in for any AI solutions, right? And then once we have that, and then we should have a better alignment among different business units, like different business lines, data. Sorry, Arvind, you need to zoom in my screen. Okay. Um, Alignment among business, data analytics, and technology teams. And then also because privacy, compliance, and legal things are so important when it comes to building AI solutions. So we should have a perfect coordination with those business units as well. When it comes to executing AI, so we must follow evolutionary approach. And what I mean here is, uh, the uh, some of the solutions or some of the function areas have low analytic maturity, and this is where you cannot straight away talk about predictive analytics. First step here would be, can we do some sort of descriptive analysis, can we do some sort of automation to improve the things before we talk about predictive analytics or machine learning or AI component to it. So I think it's more like building the foundational step, and on that foundation go to the next step, which is building more like diagnostic and predictive, and finally building prescriptive analytics, and then creating a feedback loop to make it more like a AI kind of solutions. And the third thing I want to mention here is, because such a big organizations be heavily focused on reusable solutions, and reusable definition of reusable is also quite a kind of different. But it could be reusable data assets for solving different problems. It could be reusable of analytical methodology. It could be reusability of AI solution itself. And then scalability, actually, as I mentioned at the start, we have a global footprint. We have multiple teams within the bank. So scalability here means building one solution and keeping in head that can be scaled the solution across different team and across different geographies. And during execution, as I mentioned, so we need a perfect coordinations between or perfect collaboration between our subject matter experts, our the focus data science, data engineer teams, and then also the methodology of execution. So normally we follow Agile for analytics methodologies, and idea here is the overall scope of the project doesn't change, but in between, few things can be mobilized as per the need or as per the availability and so on. So this is more like Agile execution. We feel that this is more successful compared to traditional waterfall methodologies. And also the project life cycles. So normally we focus on high business value, high readiness projects, and which is basically quick to the market, which we can push quick to the market, and which can be deployed in the AI platform to create meaningful insights. So any projects where we feel that it's going to take longer time, we divide those projects into MVPs, MVP 1, 2, and 3. But generally, our MVP doesn't go beyond 10 to 12 weeks time frame. And the last point which I want to mention is test and learn mentality. We never get afraid from failures. So failures. So this is more like fail fast, learn fast, and then move to the next steps. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so just few example. I Yeah, so this is more like we have delivery and sorry, engagement and delivery framework, which I'm just skipping all those things. It's a lot of material, but here I just want to show a few examples in the interest of time from the technology function area. First one is, for example, from the security side, cyber security. As you know, cyber security is important for any bigger organizations to stay vigilant and protecting banks from these cyber attacks. And there are a variety of stuff which you can do, where you can embed AI to protect the bank. I'm picking up one example here from the data loss prevention side. And as you can think about, data loss can happen in multiple ways. Even if you're losing corporate, laptop is one kind of a data loss by using this laptop, or it can happen by connecting to external network which are not secure, or it can happen by exchanging some emails by kind of a by Scotia employee or by other people as well. When people are just exchanging mail within organization or outside organizations, we just want to make sure the people are not sending any confidential information, any PII information, and so on. So we can do these things in a multiple way by analyzing the underlying data. For example, we can understand the pattern of those emails, who's sending corporate email to the corporate emails, corporate email to the personal email, and so on, and what types of material people are sending actually. And because the volume of those emails is pretty high in bigger organizations, so here definitely you cannot do all those checks manually. You need some sort of automation, some sort of other techniques to capture those anomalies. For example, we use text mining, or natural language processing to look at the contents of those emails. So this is one application of AI, for example. And then on the other side, we have what we call as data loss prevention framework, and We can also optimize it. This is rule based. We can embed advanced analytics and AI here to optimize this framework so that it doesn't produce any false positive alerts for the cybersecurity team to review. And final thing is basically the volume of these alerts is pretty huge, and then can we build some sort of machine learning models to rank order those volume of alerts so that the cyber team can focus on the important tasks. So this is one example. Can we go to the next slide, please? Second is from the vulnerability. So vulnerability, the general definition is the flaw in a system related to software application or a server that can leave it open for attack. And this is true for any organizations. Right, and all big organizations, they have what we call it vulnerability management cycles, which has different components, but generally speaking it has 5 components. Identify these vulnerabilities using some scanning tools, classify them. Some of the vulnerabilities could be critical, some could be low in less critical or low in priorities, creating some sort of prioritization model, and then launching the remediation efforts, and then mitigate those risks, and then again the cycle keep on repeating almost on daily basis, in certain cases on monthly basis. But if you think about from analytics point of view, we can embed analytics AI in every part of this cycle. For example, the use cases which we are doing internally is creating kind of a self-serving analytics to classify vulnerability and asset dissections, creating some sort of automations, reducing a lot of manual efforts there, creating some sort of automation for data feeds to enable some of these vulnerabilities, flags, enable the continuous monitoring for this framework. And then in MVP2, what we did, we tried to develop some sort of prioritization models to optimize the remediation efforts, and which will help to reduce the risk. And the third one is basically, which is kind of a unique, combining internal historical logs with external threat data, and then basically, predicting these vulnerabilities. So these are kind of a few examples from the vulnerability areas. And probably I'll just share the last example. Go to the next slide, Arvind. Arvind, can you go to the next slide? Okay. Yeah. So maybe we can skip this. This is another example, how we can predict network failure using advanced analytics and AI. And then the next slide, Arvind. Hi, Arvind. Next slide, please.
Yeah, he'll move on. Don't worry. Yeah, he'll moving on.
Okay. So I think all I want to say is, again, in the interest of time, there are a variety of AI technologies in different function area which you can use. For example, I listed a few examples here from finance side. Finance forecasting is very critical for any bank or for any organization. So, and those are basically based on historical extrapolation, but can be embed predictive analytics here to make this forecasting even better, to reduce the variance between actual and the forecasted values. Same for audit and complaint analytics, where you can have again variety of AI technology you can use. Next one I said is consent monitoring for the operation side, where you can use speech to text analytics, and then finally analyze the text analytics to find out the some meaningful insights. So maybe last slide. Okay, so yeah, so I think all I want to say is AI is a core part of financial institution strategy. So in addition to customer analytics, risk analytics, there's also a strong focus on modernizing the corporate function areas. And as I shared a few examples, but there are, believe me, there are like every example of AI technology which we can use in this area. And the main KPI here would be, especially in the corporate function area, would be how we can increase the operational efficiency, how we can mitigate some of the risk, reputational risk, operational risk, and so on. There are certainly challenges as to enable and execute and adopt AI function areas, but the progress is in the way. So I'll stop here. I know it is in a rush, and we have a little bit minor technical glitch, but yeah, happy to take questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Nitesh. Thank you, Nitesh, for giving the insight on how the banking industry is changing the AI and how you are getting disrupted by it. So I'll just take a few questions if you are having. So we can just wait for 1 minute. In case any one of you have a question, you can type in the Q&A section and you can directly ask Nitesh about whatever he proposed to offer. Yes, slide deck will be shared. Slide deck will be shared. Don't worry, Timothy. And request you all to like our social media channel. All these recording is there in the YouTube and Facebook channel as well. Thank you. Yeah, there's one question, Nitesh, for you from Banu. How do you consider some of the business cases or use cases, especially for disruptions?
Yeah, so we also have research and innovation group in parallel, and we always stay ahead. Basically, try to stay ahead in the industry, and so we whatever disruptive technology we are aware of, we try to bring innovation to our area as well. So there are two things, as I said: BAU, business should move on, business BAU stuff. Another one is innovation stuff. So innovations run in parallel. So these are not disconnected. These are connected to each other, and be focused on both the areas.
Thank you, Nitesh. Any example you can share on how you convince the stakeholders?
Before
for innovations, yeah. For innovations, obviously, not for your job, but for innovations, yeah.
No, before we prioritize any use case, I think we are expert in analytics side and AI side, and then we have experts who basically leading the business lines, right? So before picking up any use case, we do a lot of brainstorms. We set up the priority list, and we then, based on the business value and the readiness of data, technology, people, and let's say the legal and compliance issues, based on that, we pick up the use case. But when it comes to the innovation, again, it's more like bank is a business, right? So I think the bottom line is what business need in for immediate things, and what business how we can transform business for the longer term, right? So this is where we create kind of a balance. What is the low hanging fruit which we can deliver immediately, and what is the innovation thing which we can do in parallel, again the same thing, but in order to convince our stakeholders, you go through those POCs to start with before putting something into pilot.
So there are a lot of questions coming now for Nitesh. So in the interest of time, guys, there are two questions. So just we'll finish off with these two questions. First question is, for AI networking, knowledge and security knowledge is a must, or say any certifications needed on them?
I think this is probably not a question for me. This is probably a question
for everyone
who are working on this. But anyway, from my perspective, if you call yourself like AI expert, you need to work very closely with a networking expert in order to deliver AI solution for them. So
how do you quantify the ROI and various AI initiatives?
This is a great question.
Should be the
KPI? Absolutely. Every use case has a different KPI. I just mentioned for the technology perspective, we normally focus on two KPIs, the gain in operational efficiency. Let's say if you're doing any sort of automations, we just want to quantify how many man hours we have saved, for example, because of automation, and convert that into ROIs. In terms of business value, let's say if you're running a campaign and if you're using any machine learning models to design that campaign, you just want to make sure by a machine learning model how many extra customers have you acquired, or how many cross sells for different products happening. So again, translating them to a dollar value is important. And again, comparing anything without model with model, and this is how we track, and we track it on almost on a monthly basis for every use case. If any use case we don't have any business value, that is basically garbage. Doesn't matter whether you have used any complex technique to design it.
Thank you, Nitesh. Thank you for the lovely presentation. I know we are up time, but thanks a lot. It was really helpful, and hope the guys Liked it. There are a few questions coming, but if possible, we can take it after the end of the sessions because there are a lot of sessions today in the place, guys. Thank you. So next, we'll start with our next presenter. So let me introduce our next presenter, Chandrasekhar Ramela from Securian Financial. Maybe have you on stage, please. Thank you.
Hi.
Thanks a lot. So you can share the screen and we can start with your presentation, Chandra.
All right. Hey, all. I just wanted to quickly introduce myself, Chandrasekhar Ramela. Give me 1 second while I put the right presentation on the screen there. So, yes, all right, there you go. I work for Securian Financial, a company locally based here in St. Paul, Minnesota. We are big into life insurance, annuities, and some investment products and things of that nature. We've been in the industry for close to 120 or 130 years, and I've been working here for the past couple of years. So quickly going into the topic here, I've heard one of the questions that Nitesh took was about how do you convince the stakeholders? My topic today is entirely that, is about what steps you need to take before even you think about implementing AI, right? There's several different things you can do. We'll go into each one of them. But I just wanted to welcome you all. Thank you, Nitin, for this opportunity. I really appreciate the opportunity that's given to me here.
Pleased to have you, Chandra.
Thank you so much. All right. What better time to talk about implementing AI than Friday mornings, right? Depending on where you are, you either are winding down for the week, or maybe you already wound down. It's probably Saturday morning for you, or Friday evening for you, right? Thanks for taking the time again. Let's go right in, right? All right, quick introduction here. We all know that change is inevitable, right? Either the external, especially after the pandemic, we know that we got to maneuver through a lot of change here. Either the external market forces you, or your own internal dynamics will make you realize that. AI is one of those things that if you implemented it really well, it will help you stay ahead of that change and be better prepared to face it. Now, what I'll talk about in the next 30 minutes or so, or 25 minutes or so, is that implementation of AI as a capability is as important as it is to come up with great use cases. I've seen many situations where the use case itself is great, like what Nitesh had shown, right? It could do wonders, but it didn't really bring the results that you were expected out of it, right? And when you reflect after the fact that why didn't it give me the results, right? Some of the questions that you often ask yourself is, maybe we didn't prepare for this implementation well enough, or we should have brought this group of people that we ignored all the time, or your company's ecosystem is not there yet. We should have started small, very, very small. All those are questions that you reflect on when things don't go very well. A couple of quick examples I wanted to bring up before I dive into the topic, which will set the stage for the rest of the deck here, is we were at an offsite, I remember a few years ago. The offsite itself was great. There's a lot of senior leaders. We enjoyed the camaraderie, the hanging out and all that aspects. But in the final day of the offsite, the head of the business unit was on the stage. He was asked to give a little update on Agile implementation, how it's going, and things of that nature. And one of the audience members asked a question, which is, what's your strategy for Agile implementation or in adoption across the company? His answer, the executive's answer, kind of took me by shock, because what he said was, like every time when we have a big change to roll, we'll create a ball of 10 people and roll them across the business lines. Whatever they come back with, that's what we do. That sounded very narrow in the first place, not very well thought of in the second place. Maybe in his defense, right? I mean, that's all he thinks about, but people who report underneath him probably have a greater stake at coming up with a strategy for it and things of that nature. But that's something that told me that strategy is super important even before you get in there. Another quick example is with another leader a few years ago, when I asked now that leader has just done one of these big MIT, Harvard kind of courses. They all offer like online virtual courses for 6 weeks. He just came out of it and he was super excited, passionate. I wanted to bank on it. One of the things that was going around the company then was AI. We need to do something about it, right? And this leader was super passionate about it. So in one of my meetings with him, I've asked him, right, what is our goal? Why do we need to bring AI? What is the big driver for it? His answer went around like, AI is our goal. We need to implement AI across the company. Now is the time. And I had to, it took me a good 10 minutes to convince him that AI cannot be a goal. It's at best is a tactic or a capability you can build in. Now, if you invest in the right kind of use cases for AI, there you go. Then you can come up with goals for the company and things like that. That's another example that I want to give where environment is super important. Stakeholders is super important, right? So these are the two big things that I wanted to narrow down and talk to you guys in the rest of my meeting here. Sound strategy and a conducive environment, right? Now, what those two examples allude to is that, as I've talked about, strategy and conducive environment. Strategy, in my opinion, should always start with a goal. If you don't have a goal, you don't have a strategy. And as I've cited in my earlier example as well, and we'll go deeper into that in the next few slides. A conducive environment, the second big topic here, you should consider factors like, adoption, scalability, feedback loops, governance, all that become important. Now, it doesn't need to be like a big McKinsey or Deloitte kind of strategy work here that takes like 6 months, 15 people, the entire company getting together. It can be as quick as 3 people in a room, sitting together in a room, highly focused discussion for 2 days. You can come up with a decent topic. That's what I'm talking about. Now, I also would like to add that many of your organizations might have already passed this preparatory phase, right? You might be in the middle of an AI implementation, or you already had AI for many long years, and you already are getting a lot of results out of it. No matter which stage you are in, it always helps to go back and assess whether you started the journey right. And maybe there are opportunities to improve, more efficiencies to bring, and things of that nature. Let's focus on some do's and don'ts for strategy and environment. Let's dig deeper into that, right? Peel the onion kind of thing. As I've talked about before, strategy should always start with a goal. Now, many of my friends here might have heard me say multiple times that profitability is a function of only 2 things, revenue and expenses. I learned that from one of my professors, Mike Mazzeo, bless his soul. I must say, I'm tying everything I do since then to those 2 things, revenue and expenses. And if you can't tie your AI goals to one of those, then there's no point in it. Now, many people here argue that customer experience also impacts profitability, but it's hard to directly quantify it. You sure can relate it to revenue in one way or the other and quantify it that way, but you absolutely have to start with a goal. The graphic here you see is pretty simple. I mean, I just wanted to elaborate that, goals come down, it trickles down. Your CEO might have promised Wall Street that he'll cut expenses by $20 million or increase revenue by X amount. It will go to different places from then on, and ultimately you see the little yellow box at the end. Your goal is probably to save a small amount of that pie. What I wanted to share here is some of the Securian examples, right? A few years ago, we've embarked on a journey called Vision 2020, where we wanted to revisit our value proposition and change some of the things for 2020 for our customers and our financial advisors. Now, that forced us to reflect. introspect across all of our teams. And in 2019, we initiated a program called Focus and Accelerate. Our customer experience team was able to prove with a thorough data analysis, there's a lot of data work that went in, that increasing repeat sales should be our goal. Not from the customers who already, not from the advisors who already been with for a long time and did a lot of applications, but look at specifically those advisors who did the first sale and look at all the things that we can do to improve so we can push them and motivate them and inspire them to bring in a second sale. Our hypothesis there was, if you can motivate that advisor to bring in another sale, that person, that advisor is set for, is he knows how to do the thing and brings in more sales. So that's what we were focused on. There you go. We have a specific goal to increase repeat sales. That's how we started. And several initiatives went in, all right, as part of the Focus and Accelerate initiative. And one of those was AI. Several technology changes went in, several, improvement opportunities went in, but one of them is we wanted to think if bringing in AI would help with that goal. Our innovation lab was commissioned to not just bring AI as a capability, but also to brainstorm on some big ideas to start with. That's the second bullet point that you see there, fail fast, right? You got to be able to jump in, learn from it quickly, pivot and improve, right? And some of the use cases that we've brainstormed on with Innovation Lab were things like what are the characteristics of advisors that are more prone to sell specific life policies? Can we attach a score to those advisors so we know which advisors we need to watch out for, right? Another case we looked at is what are the factors in a life policy application that it'll go through the end line, right? What are some of those applications won't see the light at the end of the tunnel? They probably die in the middle, right? We want to look at all the applications that our customers are throwing in for life policies and assign a score to them, right? That's another AI model use case that we wanted to look at. Also, what are the data points that will help us identify customers who are more prone to buy another product? If it's a life policy customer, what can we do to make them buy an annuity product or sign them up for an insurance or investment product, right? So these are all some of the use cases that we were looking at, right, as part of the Focus and Accelerate initiative. I'm glad to report that we had some success with those. We've learned a lot and pivoted a few times to improve those cases. Now, the big underlying point I want to drive here is start with a specific goal, but then jump right in with the mindset that you will most likely fail, right? But we'll learn from the experience and improve on it. I can guarantee that your executives, right, your leaders will love the fact that you are all in, making some quick bets, ready to fail, and then so they'll actually be more happy that you're baking in failure as your success criteria there, and they'll be happier that you're not eager to impress them with a lot of success, rather you're very willing to take some risks and learn along the way. Let's talk about some do's, and we'll follow this up with some don'ts for strategy, right? As we talked about, goal is important. The next big thing is once you have a goal, there's many different ways that you can connect those goals with the underlying activities of your teams, right? In my opinion, right, there are activities your team does, underlying activities, right? Then you have goals. There are more than one ways to reach the goal. Strategy is all about how do you pick the right tactic, right path. That's what this graphic here shows. I'm only showing like 2 in the interest of time, but there were at least 20 different paths that we thought about and brainstormed on. And even the criteria, you just see these rows over here. I only had 5, but we have at least 20 different criteria that we weighted each of those paths against. That's what I'm talking about, right? If you have a few ways to represent, I know robotic process automation, as you can see here, that's many people argue that that's not AI, and I agree with them. You can put an AI model around RPA to make it do a better job. I can cite specific examples later on, but chatbot is one thing we looked at. many AI cases that I've talked about earlier, at each one of them, and the end of this is where we've narrowed down to one or two of those AI cases that we wanted to invest time and money on. Next quick slide. Some more do's here, right? This is not an exhaustive list, but you have to have some preliminary thought into these things, right? Adoption. Every capability that you bring in, including AI, will become operational at some point of time, and there will be some technology team that will need to own it and run it from a governance or operational standpoint. Two most important things I always think for any operational unit, not just technology operational unit, is scalability and repeatability. That's where adoption comes in. You have to include design elements in your AI that will address those exact things. And not just those from an adoption perspective, due diligence. Many of you guys know AI. You got to think about methods, constraints, representation, and all of those become important. And you got to think about that during the adoption or initial thought about what you need to be prepared for. Communication. This becomes essentially important if your AI case, once operational, will result in job losses. Transparency is everything here. I've seen many places where it impacts people's jobs, so you got to be very considerate of that and build that into your communication model. Training, more often than job losses, you have to spend enough time in upskilling your personnel. What does that look like? Some preliminary thinking will help upfront from a preparation standpoint, right? Lastly, governance structure. Again, these are just 4 of them. I'm pretty sure there'll be more. Define and bring the group together that will be responsible to ensure consistent collaboration, backup, and escalation controls are in place. This becomes particularly important when you need to take course corrections, right? When things start to go south. Notice how I said when things start to go south, not if. So be prepared with that fail fast mentality that Nitesh also talked about. I'm pretty sure if you bake in that, things will go wrong in your initial, stakeholders and set those expectations with them. When they really do go south, it won't be as painful. All right, let's spend some time on what not to do from a strategy perspective. Bottoms up. Now, again, there are exceptions to almost everything I say, but bottoms up will almost always fail. You might get some short-term wins, but in the long term, you will struggle to prove the validity anymore. Now, this reminds me of an initiative that I jumped on a few years ago where we were hell-bent on bringing in Agile, right? AI is nothing different. It's a big change, just like Agile implementation that many of you will concur. We were trying to bring Agile to I was a manager of some sort like a few years ago for a small development team. Trying to bring Agile for my team. We tried to convince all our stakeholder or other application teams who are in the value stream, but we didn't find any adoption. But at that point, we had some money, some resources, and we thought, why not, right? Let's do it at our side, and maybe others will quickly jump in and see how successful we are, and they will probably adopt it too. That is a costly assumption, I must say. But we had resources in hand, as I've said, so we tried a few things. We went and bought tools like Jira, and spent a lot of time designing Agile ceremonies, epic stories, and all that fun things. So what happened at the end was we were super efficient and super fast, but all our changes were getting stuck in someone else's court, another value stream team that didn't pick it up, and they were waterfall, and it took them time to pick our changes up. So no matter how fast we were, in the end, it didn't give us results. So that's how AI need to be thought about as well. It will have a lot of value when all the dependent groups and teams can adopt it together. If not, we should have a pretty good picture of what the risks, variables, and constraints are before embarking on this journey. That goes without saying. The second bullet point there, silos, right? If you have to bring AI to a small, tiny group with no possible broader adoption, like one of my colleagues would say, the juice is not worth the squeeze, because you will end up creating and maintaining so many of those technology tools that are of little value, and someone higher up in your food chain will come in and say, let's stop it, right? So it's not worth it. This is, again, one of the questions audience member asked to Nitesh, right? Stakeholder analysis. It is really important to know who you're talking to and who needs to be on board. Stakeholders, that's another team that's very loosely used as I see it. I define it as anybody who you need to partner with. And every application team up and down the value stream, every business unit and customer that will be impacted, including, but not limited to, compliance, legal, marketing, and other groups. Pretty much that's everybody in your team, in your company, right? Especially for something like AI, you might have a large group of people impacted. So it is very important to know who's what and what is their stake in the capability. Quick example here, right? Nitin, I don't know how I'm doing on time. I'm just focused on my deck.
Yeah, time is over. You can just wrap up.
Do a quick pause. All right. A quick example from a stakeholder perspective. Let's assume that you are a senior product owner for a fictional product, let's say debit cards, right, of your bank. Your profitability is taking a hit lately. You realize that it's because your expenses started to grow gradually. But the revenue is the same year over year. After much analysis, you realized that it's because the quality of your products is going down. That resulted in more customer calls to the contact center asking for fixes. These are customers calling in with problems like, hey, I can't use my debit card, or, I swiped it, it's going nowhere, and things like that. And all these calls are going to a manual contact center where someone picks up the phone and tries to fix your problem, right? Now, you as a product owner, you wanted to fix it. You wanted to find out where the problems are, but you wanted to know what the customer experience looks like, right? Because your customer center is all manual, you have your agents solving customer issues, but no real direct feedback from an experience standpoint. Man, that's all going on, but you don't have any visibility into what that experience really is. So someone bright from your technology area suggested that a lot of those calls can be answered by a conversational IVR. Many of you know what IVRs are. This is where your customers call in with a toll-free number, and there is an automated system that will take your call and route you to the right place. Now, conversational IVRs, these are slightly different, where you can actually say whole sentences, and the IVR behind the scenes will totally understand what you're saying and even trigger some actions. Now, that bright person from the technology area also told you that conversational IVRs are natural language processing and it's voice recognition. These are all AI, classic AI. Just like many of us, you loved the mention of AI, and you decided to spend like about $2 million to bring a vendor in and solve the problem for your company, right? What went wrong there? The big use case. All the stakeholders that you could have collaborated before you engaged with a vendor, call center personnel, they probably are losing their jobs. Your technology teams that need to build the infrastructure, right? Layers of managers in both areas, your compliance teams, your legal teams, your security teams, and most importantly, your customers. Because conversational IVRs, it needs authentication, biometric authentication, where from a security standpoint, you probably wanted to take their voice footprint and authenticate your customers that way. Now, if I'm a normal traditional customer, I don't like talking to a robot and giving them my voice footprint that requires me to utter the same sentence like a dozen times before it registers it, right? It could be a big experience issue. So the big point there is stakeholders, understanding them and their preferences, priorities is super important before you're bringing in vendors and signing in checks for them, right? What goes hand in hand with the risks, with that is risks. Many AI cases are most likely going to be intrusive, as you can imagine, and Nitesh touched on it a little bit. It might extract data elements that customers might not be willing to share. Data privacy laws and regulations are protecting this to a certain extent, but more needs to be done, right? Before the industry goes on all crazy about AI cases and everybody adopts it. There needs to be some sort of a balancing act, some sort of a guardrails that industry can look into. This is where legislation comes in, and it's super important for all of us to abide by them. And if you, from a stakeholder perspective, right, if you onboard and talk to your compliance and legal groups before you embark on a journey like this, there you go. You've solved this problem. Also to consider is the risk of losing morale. In the above examples where you are a product owner, right, a lot of those contact center agents might be at risk of losing their jobs, as we talked about. And that could impact your team morale in general. Even if you are not directly impacted by it, if you know someone else is losing their job, it gets very emotional and sensitive. If you would have managed that with good communication right from get-go, I think you will be in a much better shape. All right. Let's quickly look at environments. I just have 2 more slides to go. Another popular term that people use all the time is people, processes, and technologies, right? If you think about it, an organization, a company is nothing but those 3 put together: people, processes, and technologies, right? Now, in my experience, majority of the problems happen because we only consider 2 of those 3, or maybe even 1 of those 3, and totally ignored the others. That's where problems happen, right? In order to be successful, we don't want to ignore any of those. This is where, let's say you have good people and you thought about processes, but there is no technology, you can scale. Similarly, if you think about people and technologies, but there are no processes that connects the people to the technology, you will deal with a lot of turbulence internally, right? Scalability and repeatability becomes a big issue. You can imagine the other use case there. But this is where exercises like value stream mapping plays a much important role in understanding latencies across all application groups before you bring in AI, right? Those latencies could pose risks for our AI solutions. If I'm able to leverage AI and rapidly increase the number of customers signing up for our life insurance products, right? This is one of the cases we are doing. If we wanted to increase the number of life insurance products, that the number of people that sign up for life insurance products, but the underlying latencies with that bind and make that policy effective, if it still takes 3 to 4 weeks to do that, then there's no point in me bringing all the customers up front, right? Those customers will soon lose interest and go to someone else for their life insurance needs, right? The second point there is self-explanatory. The reason I mentioned that here is I've been in many discussions where the question is that group really important for us to build a consensus? It comes up a lot. Here at Securian, we have a DRIVE framework. As you can see, the acronym, it means decide, recommend, input, veto, and educate. It's very effective. You just need to look at all your stakeholder groups, assign each of those stakeholders to each of those buckets, and get those buy-ins from them, right? If you don't have buy-ins, you will struggle later on. Get those buy-ins from them up front before you embark on bringing AI. I've seen some earlier places where I've worked use a model called RACI, responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. RACI is more predominant out in the industry. DRIVE is something that I've seen here at Securian, and I think I fell in love with it. All right, my last slide. Oh, did I miss don'ts? Yeah. I did this. Sorry about that. Everything we just talked about is in this slide, right? Again, I mean, I just had minimal time, so I can only barely scratch the surface there. But if you think about it, each of those bullet points there for do's and don'ts for both strategy and environment, it might take like days and months even to sort that out, each one of those bullet points, right? And again, I just wanted to leave you with some preparatory kind of exercises that you need to do before you you're thinking about bringing AI as a full-fledged capability that your company can leverage on. A quick closing thought: AI is a machine that will build intelligence and generate insights. They need to be able to mesh those machines, right? They need to be able to explain what they're doing. They need to think like we think, so they need to learn like we learn. Now, in the essence, what it is we all had a parent or a guardian or a mentor who played a significant role in shaping up who we are today. And we just have to do the same for our AI models, where we got to give them the right environment, got to put the right strategy behind so they grow into something meaningful for our organizations. That's the end of it. Thank you for the time.
Thank you.
I'd love to hear back from you all. Again, I'm on LinkedIn and quite active there. I don't know how
Thank you, Chandra.
Time, but
I know. Time is just there. Means we have 15 minutes, but I think it's okay. Yeah.
Let me end this slide.
It's okay. Yeah, it's okay till the time the audience is excited.
I'm open for some
learn.
questions.
I think. Yeah, there are a couple of questions. So, what about adaptation to digital and AI banking technologies among elder population and low socioeconomic population groups that mask skills of effective using AI technologies? How do you offer this to sector to adapt to AI? Yeah, I'm there. Are you able to listen to me? Hello?
I don't see anybody. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible. Guys, are you able to listen to me?
Yeah, Nitin, we are able to hear you. Yeah,
we can hear you.
Okay. I think there's a problem, Chandra, at your end. Are you able to listen to me? I think there is some technical problem with Chandra. So
sorry, guys, I don't hear anything.
So, guys, I think we'll just move on with the next presentation, and we'll have Chandra back after his technical problem is solved.
I see a question here from the Q&A section. I can take a quick minute to answer that. Any recommendation on determining the length of time one should wait before pulling the plug-in on unsuccessful venture? The length of time, right? Again, I mean, it's, if you think about AI capability, right? It's a big capability, and in many instances, it's going to change the way you think from an organization. But that's future, right? But the length of time, I would say, it's up to you. Fail fast is something that I'm in love with. I always do that, where you think about some quick wins that you wanted to prove it out. Again, just to prove your credibility that you can do it, right? Think about a quick AI use case. AWS is a big enabler there. You have several different AI tools in there that you can leverage and do some quick exercises and use that as a credibility to build that credibility across stakeholders. Unsuccessful venture. Now, I don't think, as I've said, right, you got to build in failures as part of your strategy and let them know that, you know, you will pivot. I'm pretty sure there is no unsuccessful venture. You will learn something. You will probably tweak the model and invest a little more time and money to make it good. So that's a question from Banu. Thanks for that question, Banu. Nitin, again, I'm not hearing anything from you, so I'm going on.
Chandra, hello. Chandra, are you able to listen to me?
Chandra, can you hear us? Nitin, can you maybe type on it so Chandra can maybe see it? Nitin, what?
Yes. So, guys, sorry for some technical. I think there's a glitch at Chandra's end, so he's not able to listen to us. So we'll quickly move on to Andres, who is Senior Director in Scotiabank. And his topic is application of advanced analytics in today's banking industry in North America. So may we have you, Andre?
Hey, Nitin. How are you? Can you hear me?
Good. Yes, absolutely. Fine. Thank you.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, first of all, I'm going to share my screen.
Please.
Sure. I think I'm having issues to share my screen, but Nitin, I sent to you the presentation.
Okay, so let us open the PPT.
Perfect. All right. So let me introduce myself. My name is Andres Castro. I am Senior Director of Analytics Solutions for Scotiabank, same company as the broadcast. My team focuses on building. There is a little bit of background noise. Somebody can actually mute it. I'm hearing a lot of background noise here. Perfect. Amazing. Thank you. I lead a team of data scientists and data strategists, and our primary focus is on building analytic solutions for mobile and online banking for Scotiabank. And we have presence in North America, Latin America, Caribbean, and also Europe. So that's pretty good for us, a good footprint. I am a business person that actually decided to learn about advanced analytics and digital, and I fell in love with this. So I'm 100% convinced that transformation happens when you embrace both sides, when you embrace business and when you understand the capabilities that data analytics and advanced analytics can bring to you. I agree with what somebody said in the previous. I think somebody said that AI is not a goal; it's a mean to accomplish something. I fully agree with that statement, and I believe that AI right now represents a good opportunity for us to actually build some new knowledge and some new capabilities. The focus of my presentation is going to be on sharing with you some use cases as to how AI is applied today in North America. For privacy reasons, I am not allowed to disclose names of companies or actually provide further information about my own company. I'm going to be generic, but I'm going to focus on sharing with you my experience and also how AI is being built to create a competitive advantage. That will basically is. My presentation is going to take up to 15 minutes. So I'm going to leave 5 minutes for questions. Nitin, I don't know if you were able to actually find my deck, and if you can share, that would be awesome.
Yes, it will be shared. Don't worry. And it was shared. Actually, I think there was some issue.
Yeah. Perfect. Amazing. Yeah, we can move to the next slide. One of the questions that I get is usually, what are the key ingredients to have a successful data and AI implementation? And something that is generic is there needs to be an alignment with the strategy, and not only for AI, it's for everything. So I'm not going to focus on that aspect. I think it is crystal clear that we need to actually align with the business goals to understand how we can apply AI to accomplish those goals. But there are people that they want to get more into what are the technical ingredients. And what I have right now is a list of key components based on my experience that I have seen are successful. If you can actually properly orchestrate them and integrate them around a proper business strategy, I think you're going to be able to make an impact. And I have highlighted some of them because some of them are sometimes overlooked, or some of them right now have become a key factor to create competitive advantage. So the first two are associated to software engineering and data science. Those two, they have to go hand to hand. There is no way for you to actually bring AI if there's not a proper, I call it a marriage between software engineering and data science for you to actually bring the power of AI. From building the most basic propensity model all the way to deep learning and also trying to leverage computing vision and bring NLP. So those are two key domains, and sometimes they intertwine to each other. But having a common language on both is extremely key. Domain knowledge is something else that some companies are building a talent that is able to understand the business goal, and actually they understand the capability that can be delivered through advanced analytics. I'm not going to call it AI, I'm going to call it advanced analytics to actually accomplish that goal. And I'm going to give you an example. Let's assume that I want to increase the product penetration on the key customers that provide 80% of my revenue on a particular credit card or on a particular line of business. That's something that we need to understand and also link that back to our ability to bring AI and build something that can actually allow the business to accomplish that. And I'm going to share with you some use cases. Now, this requires that people from the business need to start understanding advanced analytics, and people from AI and analytics need to start understanding the business. that's something that companies, it's very hard for you to find that talent. So companies are building that talent in-house, and they are enabling those roles. And this is something that I really encourage organizations to continue to do. It's not going to be an easy journey, but that's going to actually allow you to link strategy with AI to drive transformation, because transformation is driven by the business, and is supported by the insights from technology and AI. The next one is, it's a little bit small, but the next one is, of course, statistics and maths are a fundamental component here. Of course, there are softwares and capabilities already built. I'm not going to actually make an emphasis on that. And finally, data engineering and cloud are components that are going to allow you to actually move your algorithms, your models from the pipeline into making an impact on the business. There is no way for you to actually bring the power of AI into the market if you don't have the proper architecture and the proper rails to actually bring those capabilities, learn from the interactions with customers, retrofit that, tweak your models, and then bring back. And also that embeds security and scalability that cloud brings into this. And finally, ethics, which is a broader subject. Ethics has to be involved in everything. Ethics has become right now something that banks and FI are investing time. And it's not only about getting the customer consent to share data, it's also about disclosing what my algorithm or what my model can make. Those are the 6 ingredients that I do see right now. Of course, there is change management, stakeholder identification, but these are more specific tactical ingredients that, if they are well articulated around the strategy, can actually make an impact. If we can move to the next one. The next one actually speaks to, Nathan, if we can move to the next one, that would be awesome. Perfect. The next one is where AI is applied the most. And there are 2 things that we need to take into consideration. One thing is where AI is advertised to be applied versus where the money is coming in, where the money is actually invested. If we look at where the money is actually invested, not where there's more publicity, I would say that protection, and protection is not about insurance. Insurance is moving into the protection concept. Protection is about security, cyber security, fraud, AML, risk, control functions. This is where most of the money is coming right now. And of course, banks are not going to actually advertise that because that's for private and security reasons. The second one is operational efficiency. Absolutely. The third one is customer experience. And customer experience has become right now a hot topic. Everyone speaks about customer experience. Everyone says that they are customer-centric. The question is that the only one that decides whether or not you are customer-centric is the customer. It's not about how beautiful your process is. It's not about your technology. It's not about, actually, it's not even about your revenue. It's about the opinion that your customer has and the likelihood to actually continue with you. And there are some indicators like a NPS, etc., that can actually deliver that. And 4 and 5 are more on the employee empowerment to actually enable our employees to be more efficient and have smarter conversations with our customers, and also the C-suite as well to make smarter decisions. And of course, sales and marketing to drive higher revenue, higher profit, and also bring the right customers into our books. So on the next slides, I'm going to focus on use cases for every category. And I'm going to get started with protection. Now, when it comes to protection, as I mentioned, a lot of money being invested in fraud prevention. And it's expected to actually reduce up to a considerable amount of work, and up to 90% of manual review when it comes to fraud. Now, most of the leading banks right now are investing a lot and heavy on this. And cybersecurity has been a hot topic. The beauty thing is, as long as the investment, AI is going to allow fraud detection to become smoother when it comes to customer interaction. That's the key component, and this is where companies are actually trying to build those competitive advantage. It's not about being intrusive. It's also protecting the bank, protecting the customer, but also making sure that we use AI to make that totally transparent for the customer. And the next one on protection is about how I can make life easier and secure to my customer when they want to actually onboard or acquire a new product. And this is what we call the digital customer identification, or DKYC. Today, DKYC is supported by computer vision technologies that combine with machine learning technologies. They allow you to actually, using a cell phone, you can actually open a checking account, you can validate your identity, and so on. So that's a key component that right now is being addressed, and there are multiple vendors that they offer those capabilities. If we move to the next one talks about the customer experience, and we have plenty of examples here. The chatbot is a common example, but what I want to emphasize on is chatbots right now are evolving from a capability that allows you to answer support questions such as what my balance is or when my next payment is, to identify customer intent, and also what is my propensity to actually acquire a product, or what is the propensity for me to complete a next action. So the chatbot present to the customer the path to do that. I'm going to give you an example. Let's assume that I'm asking for my balance to the chatbot. It's going to return my balance. I'm going to ask for a particular transaction. It's going to tell me how much is it. But if that transaction is associated to a bill pay, chances are that the intelligence behind is going to determine that I'm close to pay that bill. The chatbot can present to me the option to pay or schedule the payment, and actually present to me the shortcut for me to get and do that digitally and take me all the way there. So that's the next level on the chatbots. And even you can even move up and actually bring speech to speech as well on a chatbot. But that's something interesting where companies are investing. There is an evolution here that is interesting to continue to look. The next one is about the personalization of your experience. My focus is on mobile and online. And what is key for us is to use advanced analytics to ensure that when you actually log into the app, we present to you content that is relevant to you. And that makes you feel that you're being treated in a very personalized way. And the final one here is, of course, personal financial management. When we allow the customer to actually track their financials, realize how well you're managing your money, where you're overspending, where you're underspending, and also for you to set up goals to track them, and also be a step ahead. We can anticipate somehow if you're going to be low in balances and you won't be able to actually pay your bill, and actually provide an alert in order for you to transfer that money. So that's part of an example that right now we have associated to customer experience. We can move to the next one. And I think I only have 3 minutes to keep everything on track. Employee empowerment is something that is being overlooked. And when I'm talking about employee, I'm talking about the frontline employee that actually connects with the customer every single day and understand the customer pain points, and also the executive team, the C-suite. For employees, the usage of AI allows them to actually get to know the customer better before they connect with a customer. And one example is, let's assume that I'm going to book an appointment with a financial advisor. I know that COVID right now moved everything into digital, but believe it or not, insurance in North America still rely a lot on branches or stores to sell those products, especially non-creditor insurance. And also after the pandemic, we expect to see people somehow, some volume getting back to branches. So let's assume that I actually book an appointment, I select the financial planner, and I'm okay, I'm all set up. All the intelligence, what I'm going to do, what I can do as a bank or FI with this is to analyze Andres as a customer, look into what is my propensity to acquire something, or look into what are the pain points that I have expressed through my feedback, and then provide those insights into a recommendation to the financial advisor. So the financial advisor is well prepared to have that conversation with me, and actually it's going to be meaningful. It's not going to start offering me products that don't make sense to me, and I'm going to feel that they know me. That's one piece. And the other piece is AI allows us to actually build multiple features and scenarios. we can play with that. We can predict. And that's the beauty of that. And we can actually build those scenarios and provide those insights to our executives so they can actually make smarter decisions. For example, everyone is asking about the credit quality post-pandemic, how the mortgages are going to behave versus the credit card spent post-pandemic. This is a question that we can actually answer with AI, and provide those insights to our management for them to actually adjust the service, the strategy, the product mix, etc. And finally, the next one, I think is the final one for use cases. If we can move to the next one, Nitin, please. Sales and marketing is well known by everyone. When it comes to sales, AI and machine learning are utilized to actually build propensity models that determine what is the likelihood of a particular segment of customers to actually acquire a product. It could be a line of credit, it could be a credit card, it could be an investment product, and actually we infuse that into the multiple channels. What is strategic here is to ensure that when we get to the customer, we provide the customer with the right proposition. It's not an offer, it's the right proposition through the right channel of communication with the right rationale. So that's where we bring all the intelligence. So we avoid bombarding the customer with multiple offers that don't make sense and that upset them. And the final one is for marketing. You have heard about customer sentiment, which is something that we use a lot. And customer sentiment, it could be a very basic tool that can be actually powered by AI. But it depends on the depth and how you use that to analyze all the information that is coming on social media. If I am a bank, I would be interested in analyzing all the information or what is said about me on Instagram, on Facebook, on LinkedIn. And it's going to allow me to actually understand my customer and also deploy proper strategies that I can actually focus on. That's in a nutshell. The final slide is more around a recommendation for me to everyone. Can we move to the final one, please? And is some of the consideration is, let's make sure that we align the data analytics and AI strategy with the enterprise. Let's develop the right talent to actually link strategy with AI capabilities and analytics, and don't overlook change management, because to become a data-driven organization is about people. That's the fundamental cornerstone. That's in a nutshell what I have for today. Questions? I will be glad to.
We have a couple of questions, so we'll take those questions. What is PFM?
Oh, personal financial management.
Okay.
Yeah,
Just ask by Timothy.
Yeah.
And one final question is by Samuel. Samuel has asked few questions, so sorry, Samuel, we are not able to take in the previous. I think this question relates to that question as well. Anyway, you support full or partial transformation of banking and financial systems to AI technologies, and what, according to you, will remain a role of human factor after future transforming of banks and other financial institutions to AI technologies? This is by Samuel.
Yeah, human factor has intuition. Intuition, you won't be able to accomplish intuition with machines. That intuition is going to be key, and it's going to be a factor that is going to determine where you actually focus your AI investment and your AI effort. That's something that is gonna remain.
Yeah, I know it. We can take those. This is a question which will be asked by, I think everyone has in mind, and we can take obviously in the panel discussion as well. If anybody has more input into that. Thanks a lot, Andres. I think it was a very insightful session and crisp according to the time. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So guys, quickly we'll move on to our next presenter. Todd Roberts is there, who's partner at Deloitte Canada, and his topic is Key Trends in Payments Modernization Project. Over to you, Todd.
Thank you very much. So I'll keep this quick. I unfortunately have another meeting at 11:30.
Oh,
so
sorry.
Yeah, I had indicated. So I'll start with the first slide. So when you look at the speed at which payments modernization and all the rails in Canada are being upgraded.
Sorry, Todd, are you sharing any presentation?
That's the one I had emailed to you folks that you guys were going to present.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. So on the first slide, data-rich communications, real-time, higher value, cross-border, multi-network. So when you look at the fundamental realities of the payments environment that we're in as we speak. So if you can go to the next slide, that would be appreciated. The biggest change that I think certainly relates to this group is both real-time and data-rich. The transactions that we're looking at seeing processed in this market over the large value transfer system, which will become links, or the real-time rail or Interact e-transfer or the MasterCard and Visa products. All of these transactions are moving in real time. So there isn't the opportunity for manual intervention. And importantly, they're also moving with rich data packages as well. So the combination of a real business need with higher values, so there's more transaction value at risk, along with much richer data, whether it's an ISO 20022 payload or whether it's a truncated set. So those is the background under which everyone is aggressively looking at AI, machine learning, robotic process automation, and the like, as our previous presenter had indicated. But as we look at the barriers to cross-border transactions going down quite rapidly, and you look at the fact that this is quickly becoming a multi-network environment as well. So you'll see, a domestic leg for an international transaction that may be run over the SWIFT network, but the domestic leg ends up being run, for example, over Payments Canada's infrastructure. So over the course of the next 1 to 2 years, you will see all of these things happening simultaneously. Which brings me to the next slide, where we look at, so what are the implications of this? The key areas that we see clients actively investing behind AI as we speak: real-time fraud management. In order to move, $10, $15, $100,000 transactions in real time, you do not have the luxury of being able to send that to humans for inspection. So by definition, real-time requires active application of AI. When you look at being able to, am I identifying the client or am I identifying the device? Digital KYC, as well as screening for AML and other processes, is a classic application for AI. And in a world of multiple transaction networks that you can run the transaction over, so whether it's trying to figure out for your client, are you trying to optimize cost? Are you trying to optimize speed? Or are you trying to optimize the amount of information that you're able to send in a multiplicity of options for sending? AI, again, is a perfect tool for being able to look at things like the optimization of the transactions over the lowest cost rails. Another core area is disputes. When you look at the number of credit card or debit card transactions that are run over the networks, a small proportion of those end up being disputed by the consumer, claiming it was fraud or they didn't receive the goods. AI and RPA, again, are very classic opportunities to be able to say, rather than having to wait in a queue in a contact center, can you fill in a form online, have that processed through RPA, and then have decisioning applied against it through AI and machine learning tools? And then ultimately the last category that was covered as well by the previous speaker, spending and cash flow analytics, whether that's personal financial management or other tools. Virtually every cash management or current account platform increasingly are having very rich tools that are made available to clients in a self-serve capacity to provide them with insights and observations about how they can best tool their spend habits, how they can look for duplicate transactions, how they can look at upcoming subscriptions, note whether or not there have been any major changes in their profile, such that folks can take action to review or cancel that subscription. So I'll move to my last slide. So areas that I would suggest people focus on, and I've tried to differentiate between AI and RPA, as well as areas where this is less a product or a service and more how it is integrated into other products or services. On the AI side, fraud management, so being able to look at identifying the individual, identifying the device, providing more complex analytics into spend patterns is an absolute necessity as we move to real-time payments with higher limits, particularly cross-border. When you look at multi-channel authentication, people will hit on a laptop. They may then go to a handheld device. The application process doesn't fully work. They get into a chat session. Being able to seamlessly authenticate the client, by device, by biometric, by other step-up methods as they go through their interactions with the FI through multiple channels is a core requirement, as well as elements like breakage detection. So the number of URLs that financial institutions are having to support keeps going up. The probability of breakage happening in them, even when it's not detected in the testing process, is going up significantly. AI is a very effective tool to proactively identify where there are breakages in the mobile channels that require active management. On the RPA side of things, certainly applying for a new product, the KYC and AML processes, as I noted before, and certainly transaction disputes. There's no utility in having an individual spend time talking to someone in a contact center to fill in a form when they have the ability to do that online and then have RPA leverage to move that case file either to AI for management or back into a human queue. And the last point I would make is essentially the integration of things like spend analytics directly into commercial account management programs, small business applications, as well as retail. The amount of data that flows through a financial institution in payments is the largest net source of data within any financial institution. And the ability to seamlessly convert that into real-time implications for the client in terms of future credit requirements or in terms of spend pattern analysis, as well as offers, loyalty, rewards, is quite significant. So apologies that scheduling has me limited to this 10-minute slot, but if there are any questions that you'd like to send in to the moderators, I'm happy to field them offline.
Sure, Todd. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for I know it's a crisp presentation, but it was very informative.
Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Todd. There's a question by Michael. Anyway, he's given a suggestion. Yeah, sure. There's a suggestion which Michael has given that AI focus on the fact that software doesn't have social agency to evaluate the things the way humans do. This is not to disparage the value of AI, but to help prevent us from overvaluing it. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Michael Bolton, for the suggestion. Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Todd, for the lovely presentation, and we'll stay connected. Thank you. So, guys, we are exactly on time. It's 10:30. And we have a panel discussion in place. So may we have all the panelists to come on the stage, please? So we have Chitrayi Mani, who is the Chief Technology and Innovation Officer at InfoVision, Digit 7. Hi, Chitray.
Good morning, Vijay. So far,
yeah, good morning. Yeah, thank you.
Great.
Next, we have. Sure, thank you, Chitray. And next, we have Neil, who is Head of Analytics BMS. Hi, Neil.
Hi, Nitin.
Yeah.
Pleasure to be here.
Then we have Rohit. Yeah, lovely having you here as well. Next, we have Rohit Khona, who is Partner and Head of BFSI Consulting Canada, Wipro.
Nitin, everyone.
Hi, Rohit.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone.
Yeah, good day to you as well. And next, we have Tarundeep Dod, who is AVP in Canadian Performance Management of TD Bank Group. Hi, Tarundeep. How are you? I think, Tarundeep, your voice is not coming. You are visible, but yeah. So I'll ask Chitray to do the honors and take this panel discussion of around an hour. And that obviously the focus is what is the future of banking and financial services with AI technologies? Yeah, Chitray, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Nitin. Nice to meet you all, Andres, Neil, Rohit, and Tarun. Hope, Tarun, you are able to speak, right, Tarun?
Tarun, do you want to test?
You want to test, Tarun? You can just speak. Hi. No,
I think
there's a network issue, Tarundeep.
I'm going to give Tarun a call, and we'll try to do it through my phone.
Please. Sure, right. Sure, please. I think there's a network issue. There's a red signal showing in his.
Looks like. Okay, sounds great. Let me start with definitely great conversation from morning. Nice presentation from Chandra, Andres, Neil, everyone, Nitesh as well, right? So would like to a little bit talk about the future of banking. So we have been focusing a lot on banking industry. You guys are great leaders in the industry. So some of the topic I would like to put on the table to start discussing with. How many of you, what is the major challenge in the data in the organization when you start an AI introduction to the company? Because, when you start the AI, as I think Chandra is the one who presented, you cannot say, I have the money, hey, I can implement whatever I want. It's not going to work out. It's a very valid point. And when you see the data, every team will say, this is my data. Why do you want to take it, right? This is a major challenge that most of the companies happen. So how do you see in this area? How did you overcome in your experience perspective before I go? Because the root of the AI is data. That challenges most of the people looking for how to solve that problem. I would like to get it from all of you. What is your view on that side? How did you overcome? What are the different ways you had to get it done? Neil, you can start with if you want.
Sure. So thank you, Chitray. One of the big challenges on the data front that we encountered was to make sure that we had the appropriate consent disclosure for use of the data in areas and ways in which we were going to use the tools to impact customer experience. We went through a fairly extensive data use assessment. We did a data privacy assessment. We had a review that was done by external counsel. Collectively, what it gave us was confidence in the fact that what we were trying to do from an AI perspective was within realm of our policies, the disclosures, consents, and privacy regulations of the law. We were using this from a computer vision perspective in terms of experience that the customers have once they get to the brand. We've been using AI in much broader aspects behind the scenes on the fraud side for close to more than a decade, I think, close to about 15 years. But this is much more customer facing where there's going to be a direct impact.
So out of all, how did you accomplish, I know you collected together, work with the team, but how the adoption rate in the organization? With everyone adapted on day one, yes, I would like to go for AI, or it's hard for you to break the door and get into that. So what was your journey as well? What is your point of view?
So this is a very specific project, right? So we weren't deploying AI as a service for others to just come and take. It was more a custom requirement that we were pursuing. And so the adoption obviously was 100% within the business that it was being deployed for. One of the bigger challenges with AI adoption that we've had to think about historically, and I think Todd touched upon it a little bit in his presentation, was this idea of making sure that these models, when they get deployed, right, there needs to be an element of transparency because of certain regulations, especially when you take the card services business. In 2009, Card Act and FACT Act in the US made it a requirement that if there is any kind of adverse impact to a customer, that you communicate to them what are the factors, what are the reason codes. And with AI models, because it's more of a black box, the ability to provide that with any sense of repeatability and clarity is a challenge. Right? AI models are fantastic when it comes to step changes, but when it's an incremental change, AI models can be a bit problematic. And so in that sense, fraud is an easier use of an AI model. So the adoption there was 100% right off the bat because there is a customer experience impact. There is no credit impact to the customer. Right? Other areas of the business, I think it's the businesses are going through more of a learning curve to understand what it means. How could we use it? Should we use it for decisioning? Should we use it for alerting people to take action? And so the adoption is very much dependent on the type of deployment you try to explore.
True. Right. So Andres and Rohit, turn your view as well.
Yeah, sure. I can chime in quickly in terms of data, right? So the biggest thing I've seen with my clients in the banks and financial services is banks have a lot of data, right? I think if you look at all the different types of organizations, banks has the most, customer data, and the biggest challenge they have and the obstacles they face is how do I get good quality data? How do I maximize the data and the input I have and what that is the output? How can they best take that data and utilize, the customer's behaviors and so forth? And I think the one thing we see, there's been a lot of surveys. I think when you look at, especially in Canada, clients really trust their banks. So they feel more comfortable, more trustworthy in the sense of trusting the bank with their data, the personal information. And I think when you're combining that data cleansing, data quality along with AI, you start seeing a more, the whole goal from a bank is to provide that better customer experience. And that's what the banks are you're really seeing them kind of moving forward with it. And how we're helping that out, look, there's AI platforms, AI tools, and there's a lot of data analytics individuals also looking into that, right? So I think these are still ongoing challenges. The conversations I always have is how do I get good quality data? And I think that's just an ongoing challenge that I'm noticing our clients are still having. No one has mastered it or perfected yet.
Sounds good.
Yeah. I can just add to what Rohit was just saying. I think Rohit raised a very, very good point around making sure that data is of high quality for you to be able to use. But if we have to if you look at it, like TD is one of the biggest banks in North America, right? So if we go about solving all of the data challenges, it's going to be a very, very tall ask. So I think you need to break the problem down a bit in terms of saying what is the level of AI that you need for what purpose. So there are certain things. So if you break it down, so I run the fraud analytics shop for TD Bank for Canada. If you just look at, if I just take the example of fraud is a three-step process from a bank's perspective, right? I should be able to prevent it before the transaction. If not, I should be able to detect and mitigate it. And once I've done that, I should be able to manage it. So if I just break that problem down to three steps, prevention can be using very heavy AI tools, right? So an example would be let's do a voice print biometrics, right? So whenever you're calling the bank, right away I would be able to confirm a portion of the clients whether they are John Doe when they call in based on the voice voice spreads. So now what I've done is I've actually broken down the problem into subsections, right? So as I go forward, I can do device biometrics. There are a whole bunch of things that you can do, and when you think about it, that in itself, that is completely AI driven. Like voice biometrics is completely AI driven, and this does not require us to train using our data. You have organizations that pre-train and provide you solutions that you can just custom to your particular environment. So you don't have to solve 100% of the problem. It's a section of that. Now, when you go on the detection side, I think that's where you start saying, okay, how is it that I can, still predict that particular transaction without, going into the universe of the data? And for what, in my experience, has worked, and I've been on, the industry side, I've been in banking, and I've also been on the consulting side of business, is what you want to do is you want to start thinking about reusability of data platforms. And by that I mean you want to be able to create certain reusable data assets, data warehouses, databases, in which the data, if you're going from a client perspective, you have about 80% of the data that is pre-built. And whether it's a fraud use case or whether it is a marketing use case, you apply that sort of lens on it, and you create those data sets around it. So your time to market, time to insight, you can if you're smart enough, you would be able to cut down on tackling the whole data issue, the whole data quality issue, in one go. And you have to be slightly smart about it. Like one of the biggest uses of AI, one of the biggest practical uses of AI in organizations is improving data quality. And again, it will not be 100% accurate, but at least it gets, the majority of the data quality aspects done so that you don't have to do everything from scratch. So that's just some early thoughts on how you want to tackle that.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you talk about especially future of AI, I want a little bit get your view of all of your view as the leaders. How the adoption of AI in banking industry? Do you see it's a very still slow, or do you see it's a fast move, or where we are standing on? That's very important view to the industry, because some of the banks are moving fast. Capital One, some of the banks, right? I'm sorry to take the name, but what we have been seeing in the industry, some of them are moving very advanced. Some of them are still thinking about shall we go or not. So please open your view on this side. So should we go fast, or still we need to take very precautionary steps to move on the AI side, because overwhelming of technology also will lead to failure as well, right? So what is the call here? So why people are not moving fast, or some of them moving fast? What is the differentiation here?
So I could take this to kick things off, and then happy for anyone else to add on. So from what I've seen, speaking with clients over the last 5 years, AI has been a big topic in the leadership minds, right? In 3 years, if I look back 3 years ago, about 30% of my banking clients, I would say, and again, I'm talking more from a Canada perspective, about 30% of banking clients took the necessary steps to implement AI in the organization. Now, if I fast forward to today, I'm noticing we're over 60% of banking clients are implementing AI in some capacity within the organization. And do I think part of the pandemic has really accelerated this? Yes, I do, because I've had a lot more conversations in the last 15 months on how can we accelerate AI, leverage it with biometrics, branchless, frictionless capabilities. So yes, I think there was a lot of hesitation from the banks a few years ago. Now I'm seeing there's more budget, more allocation from the leadership at the financial services to basically invest on AI initiatives. So I'm seeing that trend moving forward. And I think, as a lot of the others alluded to, the previous speakers, you're seeing things, in payments, fraud, cybersecurity. Those are all big areas. And due to the pandemic, there's actually been a lot of an uptake in fraudulent transactions. And you're seeing, due to the pandemic, You're seeing a lot more transactions happening on mobile devices, right? E-transfers, paying bills, and other online banking tools that taking place online. So because of that, there's more frauds happening. So I think that's where you're seeing a more importance. And I think people are smarter that Tarun alluded to as well. Where does it make sense to put AI? So I am seeing it moving in the right speed. I think it was slower. I think it's moving in the right direction. Could it be a little bit more faster? Sure. But that's my insight. I am seeing it. I think I'm noticing really good traction where organizations and the financial services are moving forward with AI.
Sure. Thanks. Thank you.
I can just add a quick point to it. So it's a very timely question that you asked, because this is something
is it Tarun? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, Tarun.
Noise from your side. I don't know. Are all of you also facing the same, or I'm the only one?
He's using my mobile.
Oh, okay.
You want to try again? Tarun, go ahead. I'll hold my phone away.
Okay. So can you hear me now?
It's not that clear, Tarun, but still, please go ahead, because I want that we have to be hearable to the audience as well.
That is a timely question. In fact, about 6 months ago, I published a position paper with some of my peers across the banks, and one of the things that we noticed was, before the pandemic, it was it's not a question of if, but when. But as the pandemic hit us, and the question became, why not? Why haven't we done this thus far? And I think that's sort of the shock that was needed to actually go beyond, just putting, ideas on pretty decks. I think what the pandemic did was it sort of demystified AI and made it into real use cases. The chatbots suddenly became, hey, I have a PhD in my advanced analytics team who does cool projects, to, hey, you know what, we need this as a necessity to adapt to the new world. So I would see that there's going to be a much needed acceleration towards adoption, and there will be some leveling off of some of the boasty use cases that everybody has spoken about. I think those are going to go down to rest, but you will actually see a lot of acceleration within. It's actually happening right now, but in the next 24 months, you will actually see a very different side of services the way your bank is providing you.
Absolutely. We are seeing the traction as well. As Andre, Neil, and Rohit, all they mentioned that before also, the industry is moving toward multiple channels. How to serve the customer in using AI is the trend is moving towards. Definitely, pandemic is one of the impact and game changer. I wanted to bring that point to you all. Definitely, I see that because every industry is trying to change. Hey, I want to go fast. How I can do more predictive perspective, or maybe natural language perspective, or it maybe they are working on deep learning perspective. There's a multiple sector. Everyone is focusing on different verticals. For example, some of the customers are focusing on how I can enable AI for customer service side, right? How it can improve how to handle the customers. The other side which I'm seeing is how I can make sure the virtual assistant of the customer can be improved to the direct consumers. Okay, the other side which AI is helping now. And the other side which I'm seeing it, how you can, nowadays machine learning or AI, if you're talking horizontal, it's no more vertical. All of you know very clearly. It's adapting to all the verticals. So that is also influencing a lot to going forward in a predictive analytics side, how we can give the prediction to the customers, or maybe operation, especially it is blending across operational networking. Everywhere it is blending now. I think one of the presentation, Nitesh is the one who presented, talked about how it can be predicted to unsupervised learning, supervised learning about maybe capacity planning or driver, maybe ticket request or network failure, everything they're trying to bring in. It's now more only for customer. Yes, that's changing the game a lot in this situation. Just heading to the point of quickly one more point, questioning about importantly of a lot of people are still thinking AI will increase the cost of the operation cost of the company as well. So what is your view on that side? So how you guys are seeing that cost? So do you really see that bringing AI culture to the company will increase the cost of the company? Is the one view you have to look at it, or really you have to look at the ROI? So what is your view, leaders?
Chitray, I have a point here. I want to add on the previous question before we get to this one.
Please go, Neil. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, no worries. So one of the things that I wanted to mention was oversight of some of the AI models is critical. And having a simpler oversight of these models is something that we are consistently driven for. And we looked at it from how complex is the solution we're looking at, how much does the business rely on it, and then how much exposure does it create. So the exposure component, depending upon whether it's directly client-facing, is it directly impacting our portfolio, is it impacting our outstandings, or something that is, at the end of the day, gave us enough confidence on how this model could be deployed, right? What it made for from an easy adoption conversation was, should it be client-facing? Should it be in a data quality space? Should it be in the IVR space? Should it be in a people management space? Depending upon the exposure, the risk associated with it, made it for an easier push. So that getting that oversight, governance, and controls framework that can manage these tools can also help drive some momentum around it.
Agree, 100% agree. Valid point, very great point as well. What you brought up, that's the push happened based on the need of how we are going through. It's a very valid point. So I think Andres is on the mute. I don't know whether he's talking or not. I'm not sure about it.
So Andres was a part of the speaking panel, so he's not part of the panel discussion.
Sorry about that. Okay, so quickly, as I was questioning, some more question on how the cost of the ML AI implementation, what is your view in the industry? Because a lot of people, still a lot of leaders, don't mistake me, a lot of leaders still thinking, hey, if I bring AI ML, the cost is going to increase a lot in the organization. The leader should look in that view, in that angle, or how he should look at that AI ML, because still there's a cost model is there, but how expensive it is, but should he look for ROI? That's a very important way, right? Because a lot of people, which I have seen, they failed in the first step itself because, hey, we brought the team, we invested some money, but nobody's ready to adapt or using it because of multiple reasons. The case study use case which you might have picked was wrong. You don't have right experience in the model perspective or how to train the data. All you may not have that experience with multiple reasons. But still their view is, I spent money, the money is gone, I'm not able to adapt it properly, so we are holding off now. A lot of mid-sized customer which I have heard about it. So what is your view and what is your advice on this area, leaders?
So I can go first on that one. That's happened, I've been on both sides of, this is something that's always been discussed because, quantifying the benefits always becomes, it's not an, X plus Y equals Z type of a calculation. So I take it this way, and someone much wiser told me this. They said the Stone Age did not end because we ran out of stones. It's because we discovered iron. So it's a similar analogy over here as well. I don't think so. You have the choice anymore. I think the choice has been made for you. In terms of increasing costs, I would actually argue that it would not. You may actually see a bit of, a short-term maybe investments, but I think if you do it well, your costs will actually stabilize and actually go down in the longer term, and you would be able to use your human capital for more value-add work by making sure some of the mundane repeatable tasks can be automated. So I think it's if you look at it at the full picture, you would actually be able to see that the costs would taper off, and there was a study that was done by Harvard Business School, I believe 16 months ago, as the pandemic was hitting us, because this very question was one of the areas that they wanted to answer, and they actually came up with a framework of how you would actually want to go ahead and deploy, something like AI in a more BAU fashion.
Got it. Thanks for sharing, Tarun.
So I can add to what Tarun was saying. So the approach I've taken with my clients is let's start with a POC, a proof of concept. Let's look at something small first, right? Where it's a lot of manual process, takes a lot of time. Let's show where we could leverage AI, use automation to kind of really, for example, there were some tasks that, it was taking 3-4 people and they were spending days of their time and effort on this every month to kind of pull out a report. Using AI and automation, we were able to extract this report in basically less than 1 hour. It took us probably a week to develop everything. In 1 hour now, you're getting this report. Now you're saving time. So your initial cost might be higher, but overall your ROI is you're seeing your ROI very quickly. And then you're freeing up that person's, like Tarun mentioned, the human capital time. You're freeing up their time to work on something more important. Right. So I think showing those benefits and starting small gives that confidence to our clients. Another way I look at it is, for instance, if you're not implementing AI, especially in the contact center space or in the fraud with credit card, look at all the effort and time that's being spent to basically track it, the cost, to cover all those fraudulent charges as well. By implementing AI, I'm sure that the clients would see the ROI and the savings a lot faster. So I think you got to look at where it makes sense to put it and look at that investment. Another area we're seeing is like these platforms. So for example, at Wipro, we have a platform called Wipro Homes, which is an AI and automation platform, which allows our clients to basically easily and quickly build and deploy solutions for their journey. And the perfect example is this: if you go to the Toronto Airport in Canada, it's been revamped, it has the latest technologies, offers the best customer experience improvements that you will have noticed, and that is all run by the Wipro Homes platform. And now it's not a bank. You're going to slowly see those type of technologies move forward to also to the banks to help improve the customer experience, and you're going to see those ROIs, and the cost might be a little bit higher, but in the long run, I think the customer will see the benefits and the value add.
But that's what the argument, right? So quickly on that point, when you talk about POC, starting with the POC phase of execution, everyone starts the same model, right? So I want to just start with the small POC, small team, let me try out, but the failure happened because of multiple reasons, as I mentioned before. It may be because of not the culture of the team has to be understand how you have to bring in that mindset is very important than doing a small technology POC. Hey, I'm doing it. But when you talk about a very important point about pipelining deployment, still in my perspective, ML pipeline deployment is not that mature enough in the industry. I'm glad you're talking about the points. That is also really, it's booming, it's coming up. I'm not saying no, it's not there, but it's coming up. There's no proper tools or strategy which is really answering the enterprise scale of deployment pipelining data for ML, which is where we are standing on now. Yeah, please, Neil, go ahead, Neil.
Yeah, Chitra, so I subscribe to everything Rohit said and that Tarun said. In fact, Tarun, I'm going to steal your Stone Age comment. That is fantastic. But the point I was trying to get to was analytic and AI literacy across the organization is critical, right? There is a certain level of unwarranted exuberance around AI and what it can change. I feel it's highly unwarranted. I've had scenarios where, and this is more in the human capital space, where people are trying to say, okay, I'm going to take this and I'm going to be able to improve mobility of my people across and talent across the organization. I'm going to take the capability and I'm going to basically be able to hire people faster. I think there is a diminishing marginal utility at some point that is not accounted for in terms of these ROIs, and being very transparent, staring it in space is very important, right? This is not one where you are ever going to be completely able to replace humans. I was having this conversation with someone recently where it's important to realize that, and I don't know if this is really true or whether this was just anecdotal information that was floating around about 2 years ago, where in an experiment, I think either Google or Facebook had two chatbots speaking to each other, and over a window of some 24 hours, they actually developed their own language. Again, don't know whether this is factual or whether this is just legend, but I could totally see that happening. I mean, Grey Goo is very real, right? We need to be very aware that as these things start to get more autonomous, right, the ROI is going to increase. But giving them that autonomy to run on their own, make decisions, connect into other things, and drive certain things is where you're going to experience the savings, see the value. But at the same time, this is also a runaway risk.
Okay.
Right?
But the point, Elon Musk, just to bring that point, when you say everything is autonomous is happening, no question about it. But Elon Musk saying, hey, AI is going to kill the world, autonomous is going to, I'm completely going to reverse on that model. So how do you see this? Completely contradictory on the topic of how the world is moving, where he's very advanced in the tech industry, no question about it, right? But the way how he is seeing is reverse. So what is your point on that view?
I subscribe to his philosophy because I think there is a stage gate based process where AI ML can in phases accelerate things, improve our ROI, but then there needs to be an intervention so we can continue to control how these things run and operate. Right? Complete autonomy of these systems we are not at the level of maturity, both as humans as well as in our capability to code these and implement them where they can run on their own without potentially disastrous consequences. Right? We did experiments a while back, and this is going back quite some time ago, where we were exploring the idea of doing simple tasks with Siri, right? Calendar management. This is within the organization. And quickly realized that this is in its early days of the technology, that there was a bias. And the bias was it couldn't understand people's accent, language. Right? So there were certain groups of people that were completely excluded from playing in. So the ROI that you calculate needs to take some of these things into account. You cannot take just one small exercise and then scale it up to the entire organization and expect it to deliver hundreds of millions of dollars in ROI over a certain window of time. Right? There is definitely a variant across the organization as it gets deployed, and people need to be educated. They need to understand this before these technologies start to be deployed, because you'll end up with a rude shock. We had scenarios where we did RPA, and at the end of the deployment, where we had said, okay, it's going to result in X people savings, where we landed was we had bad processes that got automated without really process optimization. It never ended up saving any human beings. At best, it shaved off small parts of the process that were really boring, that people didn't want to do, that we ended up automating. But technically speaking, if you're not using an enterprise system, you could do that with any kind of, simplistically in Excel, you could do it with a Mac.
Got it. Yeah, true. Valid points. So,
if I can just add one more thing to what was just mentioned. I think the RPA example is excellent and very, very relevant to why we are seeing challenges with the AI getting adopted broadly. I think you cannot deploy a technology from tomorrow led by someone who has a mindset of yesterday, right? Because they will only look at those particular, there's certain blinders on, when they go about deploying this. So I think that requires a fresher thinking to be injected as to you have to sort of like start from scratch and say, okay, what is possible with with the technology available. But I think I also feel that the one of the reasons why AI hasn't sort of seen the enterprise sort of uptick and the benefits that everyone can go, to down about is because of this very example. But the thing is, what's more, one factor that people do not sort of take into account is what was just mentioned about the bias in AI and the trustworthiness. What is broadly now called as ethical AI, because I don't think so that it has been applied to the true power for that sort of aspect of AI to come up as a challenge to solve for major organization. The biggest case in point, like the example that everybody would know, is around facial recognition, where all of the major big tech firms said we are going to stop producing commercial facial recognition technology last year because of the biases that were there. So it goes down to the way your algorithms are getting trained. If the data you're training it on is biased, the outcome's also going to be biased. So the algorithm is actually performing the way it is supposed to get to perform, but it's just that it's getting it is what it's being taught, right? So if you teach a kid a certain which way to think, they will act a certain which way. So I think so I think it's sort of two pronged, right? So one of it is just the fact the poor sort of execution of what use cases and what benefits we will drive. I think there's a big gap in terms of that. And then the second part, which I don't think so has had material impact on like non-big tech firms, is around the ethical AI and the implications that that will come out of it.
I agree. That's a very important point because going towards the implementation phase, definitely how you are seeing the overall view is very, very important. I agree with that point as well. So we have, Nitin, correct me if I'm wrong, we have 20 minutes.
Yes, we have 20 minutes. So there's 2 points said by Naresh Gogini in the discuss thing. AI is advancing as we speak. Look at US DoD autonomous drones. They can conduct strikes based on predefined objectives. Mm-hmm. US CIS use facial recognition software at US port of entry. Yeah. So they do comments passed by Naresh as well. Yeah.
So exactly, I'm coming to the same point to all of you. I know we are boosting the AI in the industry, especially banking industry, but what is the impact of AI also? What do you see in the future? Because it's not only we should look always on pros of the technology or anything. So do you guys see any impact or cons of this AI also in the industry? Because I'm not saying we are going to lose the job, though forget it. That topic is really old topic to discuss. It's going to increase more opportunity from my view. Please, you can argue on that one. But what is the impact which you are saying more AI enablement in the organization, in the industry cultures? For example, nowadays we are living with AI, whether you agree or not, maybe smartwatch, smartphones, a lot of smart devices, we are using it, and Alexa, many things, right? We are started living with it, living with the AI. But what is the impact? What is the major impact you see in that industry because of AI to the humans in the future as well?
Chitray, I can give you some real life examples from my life, and I can totally see how that would come to the world of banking. Last year, both my kids basically did school from home, and I can take very little credit, or my wife can take very little credit for making sure they were attending classes. The primary credit goes to Alexa.
Wow.
Yeah, both of us would be in all-day meetings, and Alexa had reminders that would tell them, stop playing a video game, go to sign in into your class. Every time there was a class, Alexa had a reminder going off. Many times when they do homework, they ask Alexa. So the way technology is sort of coming to life in my personal small universe is it's very personalized, right? And with the magnitude of deployment of some of these tools, technologies, you are going to be able to apply AI, machine learning, where there is mass personalization, right? When I want to say about 20 years ago, when Yahoo came up with myyahoo.com, you were able to customize your portal with certain scores, certain stocks, certain news, certain in pieces of information, you're going to be able to do a lot of that across a lot of your interactions with your businesses, right? I have a credit card with my bank. My personalized AI component of it will give me an experience that is specific to me, that is not unique to you, that is not unique to Rohit, that is not unique to Tarun. I think that's where the evolution is going to be. Now, is it able to connect everything end to end is where the business comes in. Are they going to allow for these things to talk to them? Are there Chinese walls that regulators have put in place? Are there operational controls? For example, I have a joint account with my wife. I have a personal account. Do I want my wife to know about what's going on in my personal account? How will some of those things be managed is really where AI is going to need to be trained. Businesses will have to think about it. And so there's a maturity curve that is yet to develop on the business side, the way I see it.
I think Tarun also mentioned the same point. The maturity level of the AI is not there yet. That is what he also mentioned, that still it's evolving. I agree with his point too, and your point too is evolving, is going on, but we are there or not, because I don't know the limit of it. The problem is we don't know what is the limit of AI, because everything human, what we have been trying here, it's trying to do. So I don't know what is the limit of AI. We cannot say it is in 50%, 80%. Still, we have to see that.
And I see this happening little by little, right? So when I get into my car, I press a button that basically adjusts my seat, my mirrors, my settings to my custom requirements. When my wife gets into the car, she presses a separate button and it moves around. It needs to get to a point where this happens on its own. I don't need to press a button. That's the scale of evolution that needs to occur within the financial services world with regards to AI and ML.
Rohit,
and I can maybe add to it. So I think like the biggest fear for me deploying AI at scale is if you do not deploy such technologies with the right boundary rails, they will amplify the biases in society. So you know what. You don't go about stealing, other people's assets. You don't go about robbing other people's homes because there are laws around it. I think that doesn't apply to that extent in the digital world where AI would be prevalent. So I think it becomes real. Like I'll give you two real world examples, right? So the first one is, if you apply AI algorithms in the hiring process, right? You apply for a job and there's an algorithm that is sifting through the applications. So doing keyword searches and figuring out, doing OCR and figuring out your education and all of that is like day before yesterday's technology. What we still don't have in place is, there's certain groups that are marginalized that do not get the exposure to go to the Ivy League schools or do not have the economic background to pursue a master's degree. Those are the type of nuances that if you do not train your algorithms well, those will completely get missed. In fact, we've had instances in the U.S. in 2018 where they did a blinded study of some of these these bots that were sifting through applications, and what it was coming out was males of a certain racial background were getting automatically prioritized more than everybody else. And that's not, and again, the algorithm was doing what it was supposed to do. It's just that it wasn't picking up the societal biases that, provide the context behind, how a person's journey has been. So I think that's something that can impact each and every one of us in very, very quickly. And that's why you need some level of regulation around it. The second piece I would say is around, it's around for banking is around credit worthiness, right? So if you have a fully AI-based system, doing the credit adjudication, again, and this is tracked and proved based on recent studies not too long ago as well. The approval rates for certain postal codes is drastically different from the approval rate for the others, and that's because of the social makeup of those postal codes. So I may have high credit worthiness, but just because my application says I live in a certain code, my application would get, negatively impacted. And again, you have people that sort of, get, they get there's a negative bias put against them for a factor which is out of their control. This happens a lot in law enforcement. Chicago law circuit being the biggest example, 2017, where they let an algorithm come up with the verdict for fairly simple, low dollar, non-life threatening type of scenarios, where in those cases, where again, it was heavily biased against people of certain backgrounds. And again, the algorithm was doing what was supposed to do. It's just because that the data that was fed into the algorithms had biases in itself and was so skewed that the algorithm trained itself to say, okay, this is how the recommendation system is going to work. So I think that's the biggest danger when it comes to deploying AI at scale, and that too, financial services, very, very careful to make sure that we have the regulations put in place, we have the boundaries put in place before we can completely move towards, heavily indexed AI-based decisioning.
Right.
Yeah, model risk governance is absolutely critical, Tarun. I agree with you.
Yep. And what about especially on the governance perspective? So I know, especially banking perspective, governance are very, very important than other industry, which I'm seeing currently because we have been going through. And how the governance should help. What are the different governance you guys see is very important, critical for the banking industry when you talk about in the AI perspective? I know data governance, pretty much people talk about only data governance is very critical. But what are other area we should see as well very importantly for banking sector governance perspective?
Chitrai, model risk governance is another area which is absolutely paramount. In 2012, the OCC released the high standards for model risk.
Mm-hmm.
There are some very specific and very prescriptive criteria that were required as part of that. The example that Tarun brought up, redlining, adverse impact is another one where we basically would engage external third parties to make sure that our models didn't have, or if there was a risk, that we mitigate. External data, third-party data is another oversight that we had. We had controls over that. The data that we brought in from vendors was another one, because we've had data that has tremendous predictive power, but also highly correlated to attributes like and zip code, right? And puts us right in the square of using that data to create more discrimination, right? So we've abandoned uses of that sort of data. Ethical use, so data use itself is another governance area that is big, and we've spent a ton of time on it, making sure from a local regulatory privacy perspective, we have the right disclosures, consent. We're retaining data for the right period of time, disposing it off in a legal manner within the prescribed window of time, both physical as well as digital data. And these are all different aspects, right? So this is not just oversight on AI, but all of this contributes into making sure the AI models that get developed, deployed, are eventually compliant with firms' policies as well as local laws and regs. But you can't look at these governance pieces in silos. They eventually all sort of cascade together. They're all nested into making sure the value is realized, and that you're also not running foul of any local regional laws.
Beautiful point, Neil, because third-party data, especially model perspective or ethical, are a very important aspect of looking at, especially governance perspective. Beautifully covered, really good. So would like to a little bit go on open questions.
Could I just add something? I think we just also have to look at, transparency and traceability of AI decisions. And we should be able to trace every type of decision back to the algorithm and predicted it. So I just wanted to add that part. And something I just wanted to add to what we were talking earlier, what Neil was mentioning. I think from a personal consumer aspect of AI, like, Alexa and all that, that is ease and comfort for us and for our lives, right? I mean, I have a lot of smart home features in my home. It's the impact, it just makes everything convenient. And that's the same similar purpose when implementing AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning at the banks and the financial services, is to bring ease and comfort and trust and reliability for our customers and for the employees. So that's what I really feel around AI, and I think that's where banks are going. It's not really about taking out jobs or going to take over the world, as you mentioned earlier. I don't see it going that direction, especially in the financial services industry. So I just wanted to touch on those two topics quickly.
Absolutely, because the point of Rohit, what you mentioned, we used to talk about the prediction level as well as retraining, right? The retraining is the area which is very important. How, based on the failure or kind of the prediction level is low, if there is problem, how to go for the retraining. That whole journey of the system is very important when you talk about machine learning. Definitely, because if Alexa is saying I'm looking for ordering pizza, if it order for a burger, you are done, right? So
no, but it's still evolving, right? So I have both Alexa, I have Google Home, and my kids have fun with it. They're young, they won't capture their voices. But sometimes all of a sudden, like you're sending a message and it doesn't respond to it, right? So you got the next version, and you're right. It should come to a point like as soon as I step into my house or they hear my footsteps, they should know that Rohit is there and it gives me the news. It does this and that. So it's constantly evolving. The only impact I do see it is we're probably getting lazy. With all the smart capabilities, we're probably getting a little bit more lazier, right? Like I can use my smartphone and turn on my TV, change the channels. I'm not even, we're not getting up, or some have capabilities where your coffee get brewed on its own and stuff like that, right? So that's maybe the one impact I'll say.
I don't know. See, the very important and funny part as well. All of you are great industry leaders in the innovation perspective. But how many of you really like the change of AI in the world, in the industry? Just curious. I'm very curious, including Nitin. So, okay. How many of you really like, hey, I really love this. I wanted to embrace with this one. So I want to go for it. But how many of you really, yes, I'm really going with this one? There's a lot of pros and cons are there because of technology, right? You have to understand that, okay? When Neil mentioned that kids only talking to Alexa, not with parents, that is still an impact of cons, okay? It's not pros, right? You understand?
Just Banu raised one thing. The part of the reluctance is also the negative and bad press around AI. That is the bad things. We are hearing more of how data is being used badly rather than usefully. For example, password being stolen, identity thefts, Big Brother watching, FB legal cases. These are negative things, obviously, rather than the positive things. But I think what you were all discussing was the positive things, which is industry, and positive obviously is much higher, what I feel. Banu also told the legal world has to catch up quite a bit. What we need to mitigate against is misuse and therefore gain the trust of the users and decision makers, especially in regulated industries like banking.
Yeah, banking is one of the important industry which is getting impact a lot on this one, because I know someone talked about cybersecurity space very strongly about. That is getting big hit. Okay, we are working on some of the product which is completely enabling zero trust, is all of you know, but zero trust is not the only thing which is going to solve the problem. How it can advance using AI is going to be the next level to avoid the cybersecurity threats, which is also, I'm seeing cybersecurity side is booming a lot. Every company is trying to go for behind. But the problem is the hackers are still getting more smart. As much as the other side, the innovation is coming, but the others keep going, which I'm seeing it. But those are the very important industry. We need to look at it. But Nitin, definitely, I don't know who is the one pointed out the negative impact of that is really good.
Yeah. So there's Banu. There's in the audience.
Good.
She has written a lot. And there's one more. Natarajan is there. So he has written a good point. Lucid Air car apparently recognizes your face. That means they can see the face and adjust settings without us pushing buttons anywhere when you get into the car. So this is a good thing which AI is bringing.
Because we are getting to a facial recognition based identity. A lot of companies they're bringing more facial recognition identity. Think about how attack happened there. Someone hacked it, so everything is vulnerable. But we are still, as we discussed, it's evolving. We are not there, but when one door opened, attack happened, then we are fixing it. It's kind of a pipeline. Open the pipe, breaking, fixing it, breaking, like that way.
Well, the more technology.
There are a couple of questions which is there. If it is answered, I'm not sure. I'll just repeat so that easy for you all panelists to understand. Naresh, AI and ML technology is also becoming weapon of choice for cyber criminals. What do you suggest that banks should do to protect their assets? This is one question. Other question I'll repeat after this. So this is one question. What do you suggest? I'll again repeat. AI and ML technology is becoming weapon of choice for cyber criminals. Obviously, it's for any industry. What do you suggest that banks should do?
So there is
from the bank perspective.
But I get a lot of thoughts written, right? I'm trying to do a little bit of looking up.
Oh, hold on, guys. We have Tarun. Go on.
Tarun, yeah.
So I can take this one sort of my day in, day out. So this is nothing new. We recognize this. This is well-known sort of risk. And there are multiple layers of defense against, cyber criminals. It's not as if anyone's going to walk in and just, hijack your account. That's why you see a lot of phishing happening where, people will try to gather your information because these safeguards that are put in place for banking, especially in Canada and the US, are very, very tough. And they are, there is a lot of sort of AI-based technologies that work in tandem. There's digital fingerprinting that is there. There is biometrics, digital behavioral biometrics that is there. So again, cybersecurity is something where it's if you want to protect yourself against it, it's a team game. You have to work with your financial institutions because financial institutions have a lot in place, but that's why they say don't give out your personal information because that's the way these scams sort of work, and I get to see what gets sold on the dark web, so it's amazing how information gets gathered, and despite that there is a lot in place. There's always something that we always have our eye out on, and how do we mitigate on that? But from a Canadian perspective, what I would say is just the way the regulatory system is, the clients are quite protected, so there's nothing to worry about. But my only piece of advice would be, AI will go only that far. If you open the vault, you can put an AI perimeter around it. But if you sort of open the door to that perimeter, there's little anyone can do then.
Absolutely. Thank you. I think it's the protection obviously is much higher in US and Canada compared to any other country in the world. So I think AI ML will evolve. This last question from Banu. So how much integrated banking services do you think we will evolve to? For example, account open, some info is asked by multiple banks. Instead of filling out the same form multiple times, what you have in medical also, there are a lot of forms which you have to fill in every medical or any hospital you go. So how quickly can onboarding happen, or even financial advice? We don't have a product match for you, but this other bank may have it. So how do you streamline this process using AI and ML? How much integrated banking service you think will evolve to?
So I think we're seeing that a lot. I can talk about the Canadian banks. I think it's been a focus area for all the banks for KYC and onboarding. I mean, even online, I could just apply for a credit card. It has my information already when I log in, and within minutes I'll find out if I'm approved or not. Right. The only one where they really haven't moved as fast so far would probably be mortgage. Mortgage onboarding is something you probably still have to do the bank just to level money, but to get onboarded for a new account, that's been pretty fast. I mean, I think we've seen a lot of good traction in the onboarding space. Again, you're already affiliated with the bank, you have the account and the information. So from that perspective,
so what do you think means how the integration can happen? Means let's say there's a TD Bank, there's a Scotiabank, for example, there's Wells Fargo. So how do you integrate the information which one customer has given to one bank? Multiple times he has to. Yeah.
So interbanking information sharing that's a regulatory aspect. However, like if you just think about the way your credit bureaus work by all the banks sharing their information and creating customer profiles, making sure the details on bureau are fine. So like a very simple example: if you go and commit fraud in Scotiabank, good luck getting any product at any of the other banks, because that data gets shared because there's regulation around it, and again, you do not want your financial banking sort of ecosystem to be polluted by these threat actors, right? So it doesn't work out for anybody. So there is a level of integration already in place. The front end integration, that if tomorrow Bank A and Bank B say, hey, you know what, we are okay sharing certain pieces of information, and there's regulatory sort of support behind it, that can take place. But I doubt it, because it's on the front end space, it's a competitive space, right? So it's going to be slightly difficult in that aspect. And I would not advise people to sort of save personal information for auto-populate, because that's how the cyber criminals.
Multiple frauds can also take place, I think.
Take off that information. What I would say is, I'll just say, the integration from a customer experience perspective. There has been something that was done by the Australian banks a couple of years back, and they called it a bank in every home. So what they did was they hooked up your banking to Alexa, so that you can speak to your bank and say, Alexa, transfer $100 to Rohit from my checking account, and do this every month for the next 6 months. So that piece sort of was enabled, which led to the eventual conversational banking, where I can speak to my bank irrespective of brick and mortar, presence of brick and mortar or not. So I can do it from my home. I can speak through the app to the bank and say, do these transactions. Right now, it is at a very simple sort of level in which you are simple transactions. But it is evolving, and I would be very pleased to the day when we can have financial advice, stable financial advice being available to us through a conversational banking where there isn't a human behind the screen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you, Tarun. I think you gave a lovely perspective to the different region. Obviously, Australia has adopted it, and thanks a lot for bringing it up on stage. So Chitrai, we are now on time. So any closing comment which you all want to make? It was a very interesting panel discussion, I'll tell you. I enjoyed a lot. That's why I try to be on the stage all the time. So final advice from all of you. Final closing comments?
Just, I want to just thank Neil, Rohit, and Tarun as well in this call. Especially, really I enjoyed talking with you, all of you. But really great session. Looking for more speakers to connect as well, right? And definitely, I'm seeing the valid point of how the industry is moving towards in banking. It's not only banking we discussed, right? We discussed how the regularization as well as governance as well as the data, how the industry is moving towards. Really well-connected dots we talked about a lot. But still, the one point is I'm really excited to see how the industry is going forward in the banking sector, because a lot of people are trying to bring deep learning a lot in banking sector, especially computer vision. I'm seeing some of them are trying to see how, based on the facial detection, someone walking, do all the stuff in the banking as well. So I'm seeing a lot of change happening. Definitely very excited to see. Thank you so much for all of your comment and sharing the thought process as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Nitin. Thank you very much. Thank you for moderating, Nitin. Thank you for having us.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Rohit. Thank you, Tarun. I know you were on the remote side, but you gave lovely thought process. You gave lovely talks, and your idea was very beautiful. And thanks to Trey for making it such a lively thing. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And guys, just to let all of you know, Chitray is the face of Digit7, who is the technology partner of our company, and obviously he's you can say the co-founder of AI CodeSpot as well. So hats off to you, Chitray, for bringing this vision and bringing all the community players together at one place and sharing thought with all the people who want to listen and all the industry leaders as well. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great one. Bye.
Thank you, guys. So there is 2 more presentations, very interesting presentations left for the day. One is by Nizar, who is the Senior Director, AI and Advanced Analytics at National Bank of Canada. He's just there in front of you. And the last talk will be by Dr. John, who is in McKinsey, and he's a cloud, data, AI, technology, digital leader. And both their topics are exciting. So over to you, Nizar.
Thank you. Do you see my full screen?
Yes, we can see that.
Actually, my name is Nizar Gula. I work at National Bank as a senior director for AI analytics, and I manage a transversal team in the AI practice within the CDO office of the bank. And the role of our team in general in the practice is to maximize the value of analytics and drive the analytics transformation of the bank. So today I'll be talking about a subject that is related to what was mentioned or in the talks before this one, which is the requirements and challenges for deploying AI in financial institutions. But I will take another look on this by talking a little bit about what is around deploying AI within a financial institution. It's about the roles supporting AI analytics, the requirements and challenges that we have to face, how to build and serve AI solutions, how to do the continuous delivery for machine learning in general, because it's as part of the AI solutions. And then I'll be talking briefly in what are the types of deploying AI machine learning models and AI artifacts in general. I sent some quizzes around, I don't know if we have the results for this one. For the first question, it was around what kind of roles or what is the most important role that you think is there for AI solutions, meaning that according to your experience, what is the role between the following is the most for the success of an AI project? The PO, the PM, the AI scientist, the data engineer, ML engineer, or ML ops specialist. Do you think that we can see the results of those polls at some point? I'm not sure the organizer is here.
Yeah, Nizar. We can. Polls are there.
Can you show the results, or there is no answers?
Results, when we go into the poll, then we can see the results there.
Okay. At some point. Okay, I think there was not much answers, but my intention about this question is for actually the 5 possibilities that I've shown there in the poll, meaning that the PO, PM, the AI or data scientist, the data engineer or ML engineer or ML ops engineer or specialist are not the only roles that actually drive success in an AI project. They are generally parts of this, but they cannot drive or bring the value on just by themselves. I'm not sure if you see my slide here again, the role supporting. So
yes,
you see the product manager cares about the product. Maybe he's the most important role in a squad or a team. But this is only the tip of the iceberg, because as you see, generally, it's not like delivering value through a solution is not just by the technology, it's not just by which kind of algorithm do we use. Are we using deep learning or XGBoost or any kind of other solution, or even a rule-based program? It's how does it serve the business need, and what are the questions in the business side that we are answering. So what I would say here as an answer to that question, there is not a right answer, but it's mostly what is the alignment between what you need to deliver or to work on in your project with the business value, and how to measure that value that you're bringing to the table before even talking about the technology or what kind of cool algorithm or cool aspect you're identifying. And of course, like, it's not just by saying that I would use this algorithm and it will solve the problem. Like the secret relies in the data also, and how clean the data is, how available it is, etc. So you'll see that through the presentation about this. But I thought like it was going to be interactive between the quizzes, and but my second question was about what would be the most important requirement for analytics within a financial institution, and what and the aspects that I've highlighted is about the fact that it should be timely, explainable, unbiased, fair, responsible, or all of the above. And according to what I've seen so far in every projects that we had or discussions or anything, it's mostly all of the above, because it's not only about how fast you bring the decision to production. Is it explainable? Is it traceable? Can you explain it to the auditor? Can you explain it also to the client? Is it unbiased? Is it fair? And is it responsible? Does it bring the value? Does it expose the institution or the client to more risk, etc.? So this is about like mostly the requirements, and on top of that, we add like the what kind of design would you make? Like what are the requirements from the business perspective, and the data that you have, etc. And then what are the development requirements? What kind of guidelines do we have for the data engineering, the ML model engineering? How many resources do you have that are available in order to deliver an AI solution? The operations side is a requirement. The ML ops, the CI/CD pipelines. Who's gonna maintain your service, and make sure that it's live and available and producing the results that are expected from it every time it's requested. If you're building a fraud model or a transaction approval model, if your client is paying at a certain point and your model is out of reach or whatever, like how can we make sure that the client is not blocked and the transaction goes through the safest way possible? And of course, like the regulatory aspect, there is a big requirement. Why? Because we have to make sure that the model fits the requirements of regulations. Financial institutions are mostly like regulated, and the usage of AI or modeling or any analytics solution have to be in line with those regulations. How to develop, like how to validate the data, the model, how to make sure that it's unbiased, fair, and also to make sure that we have components that should ensure its transparency and explainability even in production. The third quiz was about, like, according to you, what is the biggest challenge for delivering AI solutions in financial institutions? And I mentioned the data availability, the data access, the performant platforms, the integration with the legacy systems, the talent, and regulations. And actually, all of them are challenges. And none of them, like, if you don't have data, you cannot deliver. If you don't have access to proper data, again, you cannot deliver. If you don't have platforms that support the production, you cannot deliver, etc. And if you are not in order with the regulation and you're putting in production models that are risky and unfair to the clients, you're at high risk. And even though you're delivering, you're not really delivering the value or what's expected from you. So that's part of the challenge, and I'm going to illustrate one of the things that is related to the dissociation between the analytics environments in financial institutions and the operational environments, because we have multiple products, multiple platforms, multiple services to the end customer and the end user, and we have also internal systems that help the operational sector, or the sector of operations, doing their job, meaning that they also rely on reports, on data to prioritize and do their job daily. And all of it's encapsulated in the operational on-prem data or tools, meaning the decision engines, the mainframe application that are holding the whole core of the financial system, third-party solution, meaning like an application or for a loan that is managed by a loan application framework that we bought, etc. And all of that produces data, and that data is transformed and put into a data lake to be used in order to do analytics, manage like client journey, improve the customer experience, deliver all the kind of business value that we're looking into. And if all the analysis and the exploration about that data stays in an analytics environment, it may serve a specific need if you need just reports, but the minute you'll be requiring that it makes it to production, then you have a lot of struggle, because first, you need to the data engineers have to struggle with the transforming large amount of data for multiple sources, and then make it available even for production. And then, do we have enough data engineers in the organization to transform that data? And of course, to transform a data, you need to learn what is in it? What is that? What does that field mean? And how to transform it? How to aggregate it with another field? And for that, you need subject matter experts that are experts in the data of each system you're managing, and therefore also the data of each sector of the financial institution. So all of that is a blocker to make a communication between the analytics environment and the online environments in a timely manner. The requirement that is timely, meaning that I want the decision, or I want my score now. I want to score my client's transaction this minute, and if I don't have a model that scores it, I cannot deliver the business value I need, and I cannot deliver the experience my customer is expecting from me. So how to control the time to market? That's another challenge to you. So I'm not going to give the solutions here for this, but these are elements that can point towards a solution. How to unify and make sure that the environment, or the offline data and analytics environment, communicates correctly with the prod environment. As you see, generally AI solutions build and serve, meaning that the bread and butter of any AI solution is data. So every online data repository should be synchronized and sending data for the offline data repository to store it, historize it, etc. Because sometimes we need to not only take, the model needs to be trained on long periods of time. We need to test it and validate it on unseen data that the model have never seen, in order to make sure that we manage the risk. And that, therefore, there what comes the teams of AI scientists or data scientists in general, in order to produce that model. And then you have the validator that applies all the governance policies and make sure that the model is not exposing the institution to a risk and not threatening the customer experience. And then afterwards, once that artifact is validated, normally it should be stored in a model repository with its data, etc. And then you can right away productize it and send it to the ML ops in order for them to make it available for the prod environment. That's the ideal scenario, but this flow requires a lot of synchronization, and the time to market can take months, even years, for a specific model, depending on the type of the model. So that's why there is another challenge or need for continuous integration and continuous development for machine learning models, meaning that it's not only continuous improvement, integration and continuous deployment is a concept for software engineering that have been there for years, meaning that it's intended to make sure that every software artifact where the functionalities are delivered in a timely manner and also supported, and every release is actually backward compatible, forward compatible, meaning that there are lots of like what we call the best practices around software engineering to improve the time to market and increase the velocity of teams. So as a software engineering team delivering a specific feature for a specific application, the same thing, AI teams or squads, they work the same way, but they have more complexity. Why? Because the CI/CD should focus on multi-building pipelines, not only for the code itself, but also the bug fixes, configuration, etc. You need to work with it as if it's in a software application, but on top of that, add the complexity of the model itself, how the model works, what kind of algorithm are we using, how can I track the experiments, and which experiment is the one that is selected to go to production. And every time I'm serving a new model, is it approved? Is it validated? Does it present a risk? How can I monitor it, etc.? And then the same thing, another layer is the data. How the data is worked. What are the pipelines for the data? If my model lies on a specific feature and that feature is discontinued because another system does not provide it anymore, how can I build it? Or how can I make sure that my model works without that? So all of this is integrated in this life cycle of model development, and also requires a proper continuous integration, continuous development. So I'm going to run to the ML model deployment types, which are generally 3 types, but I will talk later about the different ways to deploy models, because the type of deployments are different in the ways of deployments. So either you can have an embedded model, which is an artifact. You build your model, you export it as a binary file, and then you serialize it, and then you unserialize it through any library, and then serve it within an application. It's not a model that is working as an API or etc. Like if you have an old server where does not communicate with the environment, etc., you have to have the model physically deployed in that server. The second type, which is the more modern and the most modern one and the most used, which is like a model deployed as a separate service, where you wrap the model in a service that can be deployed independently from the consuming applications. And then you can have multiple endpoints that are serving multiple applications, and you can have the model receiving requests with data, bringing its own data that is missing, doing the scoring, and returning the decision or the score. And the third one is the model published as data, where you don't have teams to support CI/CD. You don't have developers to do all the work of building the API, etc. You can actually just ingest or the logic behind your model, put it in the data. You train your model in an offline machine. You create it you have the weights, etc., and then you embed them into your SQL query. So as I say, this is an example of an embedded model that I built. We had a constraint that even though I built a whole application for my model with the React front end, back end, etc., but then I needed just to, it was not useful because it was not able to communicate with the prod server. So just I took all the models, I saved them as binary files, and then I created a Java application because that server only supported Java. And then there you go. You can deploy your model, deliver your value without waiting 3 years or 4 years until the line of business can modernize its framework. Same thing, as I said, model as a service where you have the offline training environment, etc. You have your building pipeline, you build the model, you export it, the ML ops take that model, puts it in a container and then exposes it as a server. And then you create an ODS that uses the same transformation that you have here, like the ETL, where you transform your data and you add it. So and where the data is available for the model in production. So because the model in prod cannot communicate with like an environment or an analytics environment which is offline, for example. The third part, as I said, like this is an example of the model as data, which is using predictive model markup languages like PMML, for example, and a data flow like Google Cloud. And you can actually train your model offline in R or Python and translate it into PMML, and then use the data flow job or your ETL that runs every morning or every week. And then within that ETL, you call that small PMML component, and there you go. You've deployed machine learning without even needing a whole team of DevOps, etc., and years of waiting to have a proper environment. So there are possibilities on where you can overcome the challenges in ML deployments and generally AI deployments, and as presented here. And the last topic I'm going to talk about is my last slide is ML model serving types, which are multiple. And as you see here, you can serve a model like in a multiple endpoints. It's more than one model performing the same task called by different applications, or saying like, but it's the same. As I said, like it's the same logic behind. Just to make sure that the fraud application is calling this model, and the credit risk and also customer experience or whatever, they can use those models and then ping them, but their application cannot communicate with the same endpoint, or for scalability reason, you can just deploy it with multiple instances. Shadow models, it's a pattern that is used when considering the replacement of a model in production. So meaning that I have a new strategy, a new model where I replaced one feature by another, and I improved the lift of the model, I improved the performances, but I want to wait until I have tested it for 4 months or 2 months, but without relying on that model for the decision, just testing and looking at the reports and the monitoring and seeing how the model performs without really impacting the customer experience, and transforming that live without any test. So that's a the shadow model part or type. The competing models is you have multiple versions of the same model in production, and you actually deploy them right away. It's not a shadow. It's like you divide your population into 20% of my customers will go through this channel that calls this model, and then 40 or 80% will go this one. Or you can have multiple A/B tests scheduled on multiple periods of time in order to make sure to compare your models. But the decision of those models is used in production from day one, from the moment you deploy them. And the last type of deployment is the online learning models, which uses algorithms and techniques that can continuously improve the performance of a specific model in production, like in the reinforcement learning. So your model is learning day by day from the data that is coming constantly as you speak. Because in the other types of deployments, the model is static. You trained it on the data between, for example, 2018 and 2020. It stays like that until you retrain it again with other data. But in the latter, the one that we're talking about, the online learning models, is that the model is increasing every time its data, the data that it sees, in order to update its weights, etc., in order to adapt. So, but that also kind of it depends on the application and depends of the usage, etc. It's not really it's rarely used in the financial sector, but there are some tests about it, like maybe in trading, etc. But it's not my specialty, so I will maybe not talk about it. So thank you so much. I hope I'm on time. So if there are any questions, let me know. Not sure
Thank you, Nizar. Thank you for showing the deep learning model and machine learning, how it adapts to the banking and financial services sector. So
do you hear me, guys?
Yeah, I can hear you. Nizar, can you listen to me? Hello?
I can't hear anyone, so I'm not sure if there was a technical issue or not.
I think that.
Yeah. Okay. I can read, but so if there are any questions, otherwise I'll leave the floor to John for the next presentation.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, maybe I started the presentation too early. Nitin, can I go ahead?
Yeah, John. So can you able to listen to me?
Yes, I can hear you and I can see, yes. Mm-hmm.
Great. Thank you, John. Thank you. I'll just introduce people to you so that easy for a crowd to understand. So guys, this is the last presentation for the day. This is a half-day virtual event, and I welcome John Elmasson, who is is into McKinsey and Company. He is a cloud data and AI technology and digital leader. And his topic is in front of you, understanding the importance of securing the ML code with ML. So over to you, John. Thank you.
Thank you, Nitin. So I've heard my previous colleagues talking about the importance of adopting AI ML deep learning. I've heard that this adoption is actually accelerating significantly because everybody knows now that the future of and the success of any business is now dependent on how well we make use of these technologies, because at the end of the day, it's all about decision, it's all about time to insights, and it's all about making sure we have operating systems that can drive efficiency within our businesses. So AI ML deep learning is becoming the right technology for virtually everything we do. As many of you already highlighted earlier, I will jump over anything. I know we have 20 minutes. How much time do I have, actually? I wanted to make sure that I'm not going.
Yeah. So you are the last presenter. You can take your time as long as the people get excited about it.
Okay. So, just a little bit about myself. I spent the last 20 years in this field. Started as a statistician and quantitative analytics with a software development background, moving into data science and big data. In the last, I would say, almost 10 years, I spent them as a machine learning engineer in most of the cloud providers. I'm also giving back to community as an advisory board member with Arizona State University. I am helping building curriculum that helps the future generations to be ready for the jobs of the future. Now, getting back to the topic, I think everybody agrees that AI ML deep learning is going to enable companies to be successful. It's like a make it or break it for any company. Now, of course, the more the companies are using AI ML deep learning and deploying this in production, the higher the risk and security becomes a bigger challenge for everybody to handle. There's no way for us to protect against these threat players unless we know who they are and what do they do, and more importantly, how we can use the latest technologies against such threats. And while out-of-the-box solutions are still working and able to protect our businesses and our machine learning models against such threats, we recognize that limitations of those out-of-the-box solutions and the importance of building customized solutions. So today's presentation, you're going to see, is very practical, very pragmatic, and is going to be structured in two phases. Phase one, kind of an introduction to how can we better understand the threat players and see how they actually action and what they are after, what they want to get out of their attacks. And the second part is focused on a live demo using a generic code I got from GitHub, which is becoming more and more leveraged by Fortune 100 companies when it comes to customizations related to threat defense. And that's going to be my presentation overall. I'll move ahead now on discussing the why security for AI is a big deal in our space, and more importantly, what are the threat players so we can understand them. So one of my favorite, I would say, experts in security and a person that I admire and follow is Dawn Song. She's a University of California, Berkeley professor, and she made a bold statement, I think last year, to one of her presentations, that security will be one of the biggest challenges in deploying AI. And that's for good reasons. We know AI is relying entirely on data, and the data is primarily coming from internal, which we can control, but also from external sources, such as social media, third-party data, and so on. And I'm going to talk about how we can actually prevent our models and our machine learning solutions to be impacted, and more importantly, how can we become proactive in dealing with these threats. One of the best papers, I think one of the most comprehensive as well as relevant papers that when it comes to the threat players assessment is a paper from December of 2019 that provides a blend between academic research and companies' leadership feedback. So it's a blend between both production models and academic research, which is one of the most comprehensive papers. As you can see in this chart, it's focusing on taxonomy of security threats, which they are breaking down in three groups. One is influence on the classifiers. The second one is the type of security violations. And the last one is the specificity of the attack. So I'm going to go deeper a little bit on each of them and just kind of highlight and help bring some different perspectives and flavors of these attacks. Security threats by influence on the models. As you can see, we have two of them, causative attacks and exploratory attacks. They actually work hand in hand. These are the attacks on injecting data. Many companies, like I said earlier, learn about customer experience, learn about customer feedback from social media as well as from their own websites. And many times our threat players are coming through those channels. And the poison data is pushed in our models and is not only helping decrease the performance and robustness of our models, but it's more importantly, exploratory attacks actually are gathering information about what are the the areas where these models are not protected, and that's how they learn about how they can produce several other attacks later on to collect information that they are looking for, or make the model to change the prediction in ways that they can control the process. When it comes to types of violations for these threats, integrity attacks are the ones that are mostly known because those are the false negatives. These threat players now are having abilities to inject not just data but also code, and that code is coming through different ways, like emails or phishing through websites. We make a click and you get a specific script that is going to be missed by some of the antivirus or protective layers, and is going to cause our algorithms to provide misclassification and therefore change the output that the company is expecting. Quite the opposite of the integrity attack is the availability attack. I think that's becoming more and more often used because it's a fake virus, pretty much. These companies, these threat players have now abilities to create fake attacks or fake scripts that look and smell and taste like a real virus. And that is causing actually our models to and our system to react and clog that pipeline, which sometimes enables, or in order to stop this problem, people are moving to manual approach, removing some of the layers to keep the connectivity with our customers moving. And that's what is causing privacy violation attacks, meaning that once we reduce the layers of protection, sensitive data is exposed, and therefore these attacks are successful. Now, when it comes to specificity, these attacks are usually done in two ways, either focused on with a specific intent to gather or change the performance of a specific model so they can control the output or collect information. And other times is an indiscriminate attack, meaning that they are attacking everybody with anything just to learn from what are the problems with those systems, how strong is the security embedded in those models, and how are the processes overall protected. So in this case, is the second approach, or the second type of attack is generic but very meaningful, very useful for those threat players. There's no better way to assess both the security threats as well as the ways that we can proactively defend our system than leveraging, of course, the machine learning lifecycle or the model development lifecycle. We all know machine learning lifecycle has the train, test, validate, and score phases. Well, this paper, this academic people together with the group of professional community of practitioners developed 2 phases to better assess these threats and defensive techniques. Now, when it comes to the threats, as you can see for the training phase, that is primarily focused on poisoning attacks. That happens very easily, like I mentioned earlier, injecting data and injecting code in ways that are very difficult to be distinguished and detected. And that is causing the models to either slow down, but more importantly, to release information and change the outcome of that prediction in ways that are detrimental for that business. When it comes to the inference phase, it's similar, but here we see more of the spoofing. As I mentioned earlier, this is the most common threat for our models. When it comes to the defensive techniques and how can manage all of these threats in a way that we are successful, unfortunately for the training phase, the part that we are leveraging entirely the data, I've heard about online training, somebody mentioned earlier, near real time, and even batch. We are dealing with tons of data, the data that is difficult to really measure, assess. And even though there are now more and more techniques and technologies to do that, this defensive is still primarily based on a what-if methodology used by a subject matter expert. And even more importantly, the process is pretty much manual. And that exposes or opens the doors to a lot of problems with our products and models. So therefore, while we can check manually the distribution of data, the size of the data, and we can use different techniques, even some machine learning, we are still lacking behind here to protect ourselves because it's impossible to go and clean and curate the whole data and sanitize the data, considering the large as well as the frequency of the data that we are dealing with every day and every second. Actually, I'm talking about banks and financial institutions that are leveraging millisecond or hundreds of transactions per second, or even thousands per second, and it's it's becoming almost impossible to sanitize the data properly. Now, when it comes to the inferring phase, this is a little bit more, I would say, structured as well, better protected, because now we have homomorphic encryptions and other types of encryption to preserve the data, even though that's causing unhappy customers. We all know we want to keep the data encrypted and safe, but machine learning needs to decrypt the data. So it's encryption, decryption, model scoring, and then encryption again, which is causing significant problems when it comes to latency, when it comes to response back to the customers, especially when we rely on, or the customers rely on quick response and quick support, especially when they are waiting to get approved from a credit card, or they are getting approved for a loan, or even to sign up for a specific service or product within business portal. So some of the measures which I'm going to focus later on today in the second part is how can we actually use machine learning to proactively improve the robustness of the models without taking the model out of the market. But before we go into the demo, I wanted to highlight the two approaches, and I'm not sure, maybe I would like to hear from you, which one do you have in-house? Most of the companies, I would say, they still rely on classic, mostly reactive defense, which is focused on subject matter experts in analyzing the model and the security of the model with subject matter experts. Once a threat happens, once an attack happens, the model is removed and is analyzed, and the lesson learned is taken, and then the model is improved, and the model is put back into production, which can take anywhere between days or even weeks. So that means that our service becomes back manual, and we rely less on machine learning. The second approach, which is the proactive approach, which is the future of machine learning, is proactive defense. We are actually letting machine learning, and I'm going to show the generative adversarial network, how can actually help us to proactively and continuously run adversarial models, classifiers, to improve the quality of the main classifier, and not allowing our attack to change the outcome of our classification or regression, whatever we are doing, and also maintaining our product, our machine learning model in production all the time, so the removal of the product is not needed. So with that being said, I'm going to start my demo. I'm going to share a different screen. Okay. So I'm going to walk quickly through the model, and then I'm going to show real time how the model recalibration happened. And as I mentioned earlier, we are making now use of AI ML deep learning in virtually any environment, in any decision. We try to use AI ML deep learning to improve the user experience, and more importantly, to leverage the human knowledge and brain in areas where we need it, while machine learning can be used to accelerate the decision process, as well as to reduce the effort that up until now it was done entirely manually. For example, people sign up for loans, for credit lines, they sign up for different services, and that's the time when we have to be careful, because putting a model in production, even for searching submission of resumes, many companies are actually using right now machine learning to do the pre-selection. We are talking about hundreds, maybe thousands of resumes. How do we figure out which candidate is the best for us? Or how do we figure out which candidate should get a credit line 50,000 more, or 50 or over or below $50,000, right? All of these decisions now should be made with the use of machine learning, because this decision, leveraging the data that we have, can become more accurate if they are done by machine learning, and also the speed is significantly higher considering the limited manual and human decision capabilities. Well, with great power comes great responsibilities. It's not enough just to make faster decisions and better decisions, but we have to do this consistently. So we cannot allow threat players to stop this process or to impact the quality of the process. So this example, like I said, it is an open source solution that is a good example to show how other companies, Fortune 100 companies that have the right skill in the house can actually leverage generative adversarial network to proactively identify these threats and continuously balance, recalibrate the model without taking the model out of production and without having an impact on the classifier. Technically making good decisions as well as consistent good decisions. As you can see in this use case or example, this data is generic, using information such as age, occupation, relationship, and type of education and so on. And then it identifies some sensitive attributes, gender and race. And what this model is doing technically is making sure that not only that we are classifying properly the applicants who should receive a credit line over or below $50,000, but more importantly, we want to make sure that this data that is for the candidates is used in ways that is fair and it is transparent as well. Now, if I check first, I'm going to check, is my classifier making the right predictions? Meaning, do I have the right accuracy, or is my ROCAUC curve giving me the right values? And I can see here this continuous check can be done, and it's showing me continuous good values. Accuracy 85 plus is a production grade. AUC, ROCAUC, it's also 91%. Now, moving below, we have to do the same thing about fairness. And I use here, the P rule, which is the, I would say, the standard. The P rule is based on how well is the decision made. For example, if somebody applies for a loan, it's a female or a black individual, how is the accuracy compared to, or the balance compared to a white male individual? And this example shows that for every dollar amount, let's say we have $1 for $30,000, for $80,000, and for $100,000, is the number of females and males equal, or is the number of white and black equal or balanced? As long as for the majority of these 100,000 values shows balanced number of applicants, it means that we have 100% fair rule. If it's for 80%, that means we have 80% fair. So this is a very basic but also very powerful rule to stratify the P rule and how we can see if the model that makes a classification for such a decision, is it fair or not? Well, based on this model and considering a use case in which we got injected a new data from online, it just got a disruption. We are under attack, and the continuous model is actually discovering that we have right now a problem with the fairness, and we can clearly see that the gender as well as the race suffer. Now, how can we handle this? We can either take the model out and we can manually review to see what data is the problem and how can eliminate the data, retrain the model, and put the model back in production. Or we can use generative adversarial network, which is relying on the two models. One is the classifier that is going to make the prediction who's getting over $50,000 loan or who's getting below $50,000 loan, while the other classifier or the adversarial network solution is going to take an input with these values and then provide another way to assess, another classifier, which is telling us how well this is balanced for every single sensitive field like race and gender. And of course, we have this objective function that is creating the difference between the classifier loss minus the adversarial classifier, with lambda being the parameters that needs to be watched, because while we can improve significantly potentially our data by curating the online data, which is poison, we also have an impact on our accuracy and ROC AUC metric. So that's why we have to make sure that the model meets both, not just the fairness, but rather also the classification. We cannot keep in production a model that is very fair, but actually it is not providing strong accuracy and ROC, AUC metric for the way we classify. So in order to do this, of course, we have to train the model first on the data, and has to be, fully a set of data should be published already to the prediction should be published to the second model. The second model will take those predictions and they will use them for the second classifier. And we'll have multiple iterations that I'm going to show later on to enable this continuous validation and recalibration of the model. So if somebody is attacking my algorithm with poisonous data, then I have a tool now to continuously classify my data and continuously balance my data with this model. And I'm going to run now this final building block. I just ran it before, but I'm going to run this one just so you can see real time. We can clearly see that we have a problem with our fairness, while we have very high accuracy and ROC AUC. Well, in about 25 iterations, we can see the balance that is happening, while it maintains very good fairness and low bias. At the same time, the classifier that gives us the predictions for who should get the over or below 50K, it still remains production grade, which is over 80% accuracy. So you can see in 25 iterations, we maintained the attack, we curated the attack data, we eliminated it, we recalibrated the model, and now we are ready to continue with a fair assessment. So that is pretty much my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. And looking forward to see if you have any questions for me.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you, John, for the lovely insight and a deep learning model. And you showed us how machine learning algorithms can derive a lot of things through that. So thanks a lot for sharing the insights. Hope the audience liked it. Any question, guys? Any one of you have for John? Nizar, are you there?
This is really good input, John. It's a really very programmatic level of information to the people. Really well designed. Yep.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, actually, it was very deep, and you showed a lot of deep algorithms, which is not easy for people to understand if they are at a nascent level. Thanks for showing this. Actually, it's very much important.
Okay, thank you.
This is the base, actually, which makes up for that. Yeah. So thanks a lot for your lovely insight, guys. Any question for John? This is the last presentation. I'll wait for 1 minute. And then I'll have the closing comments so that we can take it forward from here. Okay, guys, so if you don't... Oh, Nizar is here. Thank you, Nizar. Sorry, I can't listen to you, Nizar. There was...
I said sorry, I had to jump to work.
Oh, yeah, I know, you were busy, you told me, yeah. So there was a question for you, Nizar, from Banu.
Yes.
I'll repeat for you. Hi, Nizar, question for you. When building models, there may be some feature engineering or combined variables built as a part of the model builder. What and how do you recommend we communicate these with stakeholders? Not all may have practical meaning, sort of becomes a black box. Any tips on how these can be explained?
Well, I can answer here, right?
Yes, please.
Okay, generally, when you build features, etc., it depends on the stakeholders you're talking about. Are they the IT department that should put those features in pipelines for an ODS, like an operational data store, or you're talking about the person that would validate? It depends on the stakeholder, but in generally, as a best practice, every feature should be documented, and you have to have the code that built that feature. And that code should be like in a function or whatever that can be generally communicated to the ML ops team to optimize it and put it in production so that you can have those features in an ETL ready for your model in production. I hope that replies to, but I mean, not all the features may have a practical meaning. For that, yeah, I mean, there are lots of libraries where you can show the feature importance of your model, and basically then you can actually show that, okay, this feature is important for the model, and that means, and it has this weight. But the feature engineering that combines variables, it cannot be arbitrary. You cannot just rely on a tool to do it and then just say, okay, the tool selected this feature, then it might be interesting. We need to explain it and check with the business to make sure that it makes sense. Otherwise, of course, there is a risk for the model becoming a black box because it will not at all. You cannot replicate it. The minute something changes, all those features will change. So there is no stability in your model.
Cool. Yeah. Cool. Thank you, Nizar. Thank you. Hope it solves Bhanu's question, which she put it. It was in your presentation, but as your voice was not audible, so I just moved on with the next one.
Okay.
Thanks for staying with us. Yeah. Thanks for staying with us, and thanks for the lovely presentation. All the presenters were excellent, actually. And it was very absorbing. It was a variety, ranging from codes to the thought process. The last two presentations are more into deep learning and machine learning. You can say the deeper part of AI. And the above talks, obviously, panel discussion was something which was self-explanatory. It gave a lot of value to the audience and to the panelists and to the organizer as well. So maybe have Chitra, you also on the stage, please, so that we can have the closing comments.
Absolutely. Thanks, Nitin.
Thanks, Chitra. Just to wrap it up. So for the event, guys, we would like to thank our technology partner Digit7 and Chitra Meni, who is the CTIO of Digit7 InfoVision, and he's a visionary leader, and it helps us organize such great events through AI CoreSpot. Thanks a lot, Chitra, for giving AI CoreSpot the opportunity to communicate to the thought leaders, the people who are in the community who want to listen to the thought leaders, where it is very difficult to reach out. So thanks for creating this platform, AI CoreSpot, where we can reach out to all one.
Thanks for the opportunity. Definitely the vision is coming true. I'm seeing a lot of industry leaders who has a thought process, as well as a lot of startup company we would like to invite more to bring their innovative ideas in this platform to share for a lot of people to get benefit. The intention of this to how to share the ideas and innovation in this platform. Definitely we are on the right direction. Nitin, you are heading really great. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for all the people who talked and today gave a nice presentation on today. Thanks, Nitin.
Yeah. Thank you, Chitra. And today's event was broadcasted in the Facebook and the YouTube page of our company. So request all of you to go like it and see the recording anytime, at your free time. You can always have a feel of that. Obviously, we'll be sending out the presentations to all of you for all the presentations which happened today. We would like to thank our community partners as well. The speakers who came today, Nitesh, Soni, Chandrasekhar Ramela, Andres Castro, Todd Roberts, Neil Bhandar, Rohit Kona, Tarundeep Dhot, Nizar, and John. to all the attendees also for taking time out of your busy schedule and attending the same. So thanks all of you. Log on to our website and like the social media channels as I communicated initially and just before this as well, as we'll be sharing lots of knowledge sharing topics, details, announcement of next events, and much more, which will help you all register and attend, and it will make your horizon a much more broader way. So thank you all. Thanks a lot for attending. Thanks, Chitrai. Thanks, everyone. So we'll close on the same. Thank you. See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Take care. Have a nice weekend ahead. Thank you.